Tang Fong looked at the blood on Big Sister's handkerchief, sighing deeply. Big Sister, why do you have to risk your life like this? So what if you pass this round? Father and the rest have already passed away. Big Sister, you are my only kin. If something happens to you, what will I do? Tang Miaoming stretched out her hand, lightly stroking Tang Fong's hair. Third brother, you are our Tang tribe leader, don't be so unambitious. In this imperial court contest, our Tang tribe suffered disastrous losses. We were almost annexed by other tribes. Now is a once-in-a-blue-moon opportunity. We need to borrow the 88 Truyang building to make our tribe strong and prosperous again. Tang Fong disapprovingly curled his lips. But Big Sister, you forcefully passed the round and caused serious injuries. The gains do not make up for the losses. I, your third brother, feel heartache. These days I don't even have the mood to take care of the tribe's affairs. What? Tang Miaoming heard this and her expression turned solemn, her sharp gaze fixed on Tang Fong. She reprimanded without hesitation. Tang Fong tribe leader, you have a heavy responsibility. How can you be so sentimental? Revitalizing the tribe is your responsibility. It is the meaning of being a tribe leader. From today onwards, I do not want to hear similar complaints. Do you understand? Big Sister, I was wrong. Tang Fong hurriedly stood up from the bed, his face full of shame as he lowered his head to admit his mistake. Since young, Big Sister was the one who treated him the best. Tang Miaoming's gaze gradually turned gentle. She faintly sighed. Third brother, I know you have a lively personality, you like to roam the world, living an unrestrained life. But as the last man in the family, you should be brave enough to bear the burden. From today onwards, the meaning of your life is to revitalize the tribe. Do you understand? Big Sister is right, little brother understands. Don't be angry, I already have injuries on my body. Tang Miaoming was still solemn. When you return, copy the first stanza of the third chapter of The Legends of Renzu 10 times overnight. Tang Fong's heart was instantly filled with warmth. Since young, Big Sister's punishment was to make him copy books. Big Sister, rest first, I will go and copy now. The Legends of Renzu, Chapter 3 stanza. Renzu's second daughter, Desolate Guyue, went to Qingbai Mountain to find Success Gu in order to save her father from the door of life and death. But at the last moment, she failed. She lost herself and became an ugly and powerful monster. Without his daughter's help, and his eldest son, Verdant Great Son, became even more dispirited, Renzu was trapped in Luopa Valley, unable to survive. Luopa Valley was like a huge labyrinth, twisting and turning. Occasionally, a vast bewilderment fog would spread out, causing the soul to relax. Sometimes, Luopa wind would blow like a sharp blade, cutting the soul. Renzu was a soul body, he could not find the way out of the bewilderment fog. The Luopa wind cut his soul, causing him to become weaker and weaker, his situation becoming more dangerous. The soul fragments cut by the Luopa wind gradually condensed into a young man. Like this, Renzu's third son was born. He was Northern Dark Ice Soul. Oh my son, thank you for your company. I do not have much time left, in my final days. Because of your company, I am not lonely at all. Renzu sighed. Northern Dark Ice Soul was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Although he did not speak much, he was very filial towards Renzu. Seeing Renzu getting weaker day by day, his mood became increasingly heavy. He was determined to save Renzu. Renzu could feel his determination. He felt gratified and pained at the same time. Don't bother, my son, I appreciate your filial piety. But I understand now, life and death cannot be forced. Humans have to die eventually, this is the fate of humans. Northern Dark Ice Soul sobbed, Father, I know what you said is right. I also know that my efforts will be in vain. But seeing you getting weaker like this, if I do not work hard, my heart will feel even more terrible. Let me do something for you. Renzu sighed, he could only let him go. Northern Dark Ice Soul wandered in Luopa Valley, he was born here, the Luopa wind could not cut his soul, the bewilderment fog could not block his vision. He searched bitterly, but could not find the way out. Just as he was getting more and more desperate, he encountered a goo worm. Ayaya, to think I was discovered by you. This goo worm looked like a ladybug, it was fat like a ball, but it was extremely agile, flashing around Northern Dark Ice Soul. Northern Dark Ice Soul's eyes brightened, he asked curiously, "What goo are you?" "My name is Accident." This goo worm answered. Northern Dark Ice Soul's gaze dimmed, "So you are Accident goo, but you are not Success goo." Accident goo sneered, "Young man, don't look down on me. I am an existence that makes Success goo love and hate. The power of accident is very strong. Do you know what it means for you to meet me here?" "What?" Accident goo shook its fat body, saying proudly, "What is this place?" "This is Luo Pa Valley, a death realm. You are here, it means you are already dead. But you met me, it means you met with an accident in death. That is, rebirth. Hold on to me tightly, I will bring you back to the human world and revive you." "Really?" Northern Dark Ice Soul was overjoyed, "Can I bring my father with me?" Accident goo shook its head, "You met me, not your father, so I can only bring you with me." Northern Dark Ice Soul was extremely disappointed, he rejected, "Since I cannot bring my father, I will not leave either. I want to accompany my father until his final moments." Accident goo laughed loudly, saying in a domineering tone, "The accidents of life cannot be rejected. Young man, you must leave with me." The moment it finished speaking, Accident goo forcefully brought Northern Dark Ice Soul away from the door of life and death, returning to the human world. Northern Dark Ice Soul had a living body of flesh and blood, facing the huge world alone, he felt extremely lost. Accident goo disappeared, he suddenly recalled Renzu's words, he had a second sister called Desolate Gyuein. At this time, Cognition goo found him, "Young man, don't doubt me, cognition has always been a person's friend, I am here to help you." Cognition goo told Northern Dark Ice Soul about Chengbai Mountain and Desolate Gyuein. Northern Dark Ice Soul decided to meet his second sister first. When he saw Desolate Gyuein, he shed tears of sadness. Northern Dark Ice Soul tried to communicate with Desolate Gyuein. But Desolate Gyuein, who had turned into a monster, kept on muttering questions. "Where is this?" Northern Dark Ice Soul pondered for a moment before replying, "This is the human world, living beings can move around here. Above us is the sky, below us is the earth." "Who am I?" Desolate Gyuein asked again. "You are a human, Renzu's second daughter, your name is Desolate Gyuein. You are my second sister." Northern Dark Ice Soul replied. "Second sister, wake up quickly. Our father is dead, he is trapped in Luo Pa Valley, we need to hurry and save him." "Renzu." Desolate Gyuein. "Save?" The monster shook its head in confusion, "Why should I save him? Shouldn't humans die? What's wrong with death? Why do humans live? Why do I live?" This time, Northern Dark Ice Soul could not answer. Why do humans live? While Northern Dark Ice Soul was thinking about this question, Bewilderment goo quietly arrived beside him, causing him to lose his senses of his surroundings. Along with it were Love goo and Disguise goo. Cognition goo saw them and felt an incomparable headache. These goo were famous for being mischievous, they often moved together, even Cognition goo did not want to provoke them. "Love, haven't you harmed enough people? Why don't you let them go?" Cognition goo sighed. "Don't try to reason with me, I am unreasonable." Love goo's tone was unruly, "Get lost, Cognition, I don't like you." Cognition goo was helpless, it could only retreat. "Another person has come." "Huh." Love goo saw Northern Dark Ice Soul and was very happy, because it had another target to play with. It was sworn brothers with Disguise goo, it immediately used its strength to disguise as Cognition goo. "Young man, your second sister has forgotten herself. If you want to save her, you need to find Meaning goo," Love goo said. Northern Dark Ice Soul came back to his senses, he did not suspect anything, he asked Love goo, "I have seen Accident goo before, may I ask, where is this Meaning goo? How do I find it?" Love goo used a solemn tone to deceive him, "Oh human, you need to know, your lives in this world have meaning. As long as you find meaning Gu, you will be able to wake up your second sister. Follow the direction I point, keep walking, you will find meaning Gu. Northern Dark Ice Soul expressed his gratitude and immediately set off. Love Gu, Bewilderment Gu, and Disguise Gu looked at his departing figure and laughed loudly. How could there be meaning Gu in this world? There was no such Gu worm. Northern Dark Ice Soul could not find it no matter how hard he tried. Fool, who asked you to anger me? I will let you know that the punishment of love is extremely terrifying. Next, we will follow him and take turns to toy with him. Love Gu's suggestion was approved by the other two Gu. Like this, Northern Dark Ice Soul was toyed with by the three Gu. He suffered greatly. But in order to find the non-existent meaning Gu, he persevered. This spirit moved Cognition Gu. While Love Gu was not around, Cognition Gu came to Northern Dark Ice Soul's side, wanting to help him again. Cognition, what are you doing here? We are having fun. Bewilderment Gu and Disguise Gu rejected Cognition. Cognition Gu laughed, I am afraid of love, but I am not afraid of you too. Oh young man, use my strength to wake up. Northern Dark Ice Soul used Cognition Gu's ability to recognize the truth. He was no longer confused and saw through the disguise. Bewilderment Gu and Disguise Gu could only leave in defeat. Northern Dark Ice Soul expressed his gratitude to Cognition Gu. Thank you, Cognition Gu, because of you, I thought of a way to save my second sister. Oh? What method is that? In this world, meaning Gu does not exist. But I can create a meaning Gu. Northern Dark Ice Soul said confidently. A person's life had no meaning, but it could be given a meaning. Northern Dark Ice Soul returned to Desolate Gu and personally created a meaning Gu, placing it in Desolate Gu's mind. I am alive to find success Gu and save father. I understand. Desolate Gu's eyes shined. The meaning of living. Tang Fong put down the pen in his hand. It was already deep into the night. In this imperial court-blessed land, a gentle silver radiance covered the land. After continuously copying books, he was deeply moved. People living in this world will always feel lost. But as long as they find the meaning of their life, they will find their direction and move forward bravely. At the same time, they will know what they want and what they do not want, and they will not fear sacrifice. Big Sister's intention in asking me to copy books is probably this. He lightly pushed open the window, looking at the glorious and beautiful sacred palace. He thought of all kinds of people, some strong, some weak. His emotions gradually became excited. Every person's life has all kinds of meaning. And my meaning is to lead the tribe towards prosperity. At the same time, Water Pavilion. Heart of self-sacrifice. Fong Yuan's lips curled into a proud sneer. He stretched out his right hand. Without any hesitation, he reached into the bowl and took out Calamity Beckoning Gu. Absorbing his aura, Calamity Beckoning Gu's body flashed and became Fong Yuan's possession. The whole process was extremely smooth. There were no tremors or backlash. With his identity as a transmigrator, his 500 years of experience in his previous life, he had already seen through life and death. Family, friendship, and love were not his interests. Only eternal life, this grand and unreachable goal, could make his journey in life show intense interest. This was the meaning he had given to this life. But pursuing eternal life did not mean he was afraid of death, afraid of failure. Towards death and failure, he accepted it calmly. In fact, whether eternal life existed or not, there was no evidence to prove it. But so what if it did not exist? Fong Yuan enjoyed this process. In the process of pursuing eternal life, he found the meaning. He felt that this life was full of interest. His body's low-level desires, the satisfaction of love and hate, he was already sick of them. Only eternal life was a worthy goal. Thus, I already have the resolution to sacrifice myself. Fong Yuan's gaze was cold. He played with the rank 7 Immortal Gu in his hand. Chapter 574. Fong Yuan carefully looked at Calamity Beckoning Immortal Gu in his hand. This Gu was rank 7, after being nurtured by the giant Vermilion Bowl. it had already formed completely. It was the size of a pinky, grayish-white in color and was extremely exquisite, resembling a silkworm chrysalis. As Fong Yuan played with it, Calamity Beckoning Goo continued to absorb his aura. Fong Yuan could clearly feel that the deepest connection between him and Calamity Beckoning Goo was becoming deeper and longer. Fong Yuan's heart rippled slightly. It would be a lie if he did not sigh. In his previous life, he had gone through untold hardships and slaughtered countless lives to refine a rank 6 spring-autumn cicada. Now, with the advantage of rebirth, he had obtained Calamity Beckoning Goo before he was even 100 years old, which was a rank higher than spring-autumn cicada. Calamity Beckoning Goo's effect was extremely unique, it sacrificed itself to attract heavenly calamities and earthly tribulations. But Fong Yuan firmly believed that a Goo master's use of Goo depended on their thoughts. Like the Chainsaw Golden Centipede, a rank 4 mortal Goo master, Electric Saw Mad Demon, could use different methods against it. Then why couldn't he, Fong Yuan, create new uses for it? Let's not talk about other things, just the existence of this Calamity Beckoning Goo proves that the legendary luck path truly exists. Giant Sun Immortal had been extremely lucky his entire life. It was rumored that it was because of the luck path Goo worms he created. However, this rumor had never been verified. But now, the Calamity Beckoning Goo in Fong Yuan's hands belonged to Luck Path. It was an immortal Goo refined by Refinement Path Grandmaster Mo Yao through the senses of Divert Disaster Goo in 88-point Jinyang Tower. Divert Disaster Goo, Calamity Beckoning Goo, these were Luck Path Goo worms. The ink text on the surface of the bowl was a strong proof. Mo Yao even pointed out in the text that Giant Sun Immortal's luck path Goo worms could snatch other people's good luck and use it on himself. At the same time, it could also divert his bad luck and divert the calamity to someone else. As a complete path, Luck Path had a clear structure. It included attack, defense, divert, healing and other aspects. It was just that everyone had the invisible and colorless luck that was targeted at them. After Luck Path was created by the Giant Sun Immortal, he had kept it a secret, silently making a fortune. The Giant Sun Immortal is the great thief of luck. Once the Giant Sun dies, the great thief of luck will disappear. Mo Yao expressed his feelings in the article. This strange woman had a strong personality, she even dared to make such comments about the celestial venerables. She even speculated that the treasury chamber of 88-point Jinyang Tower might contain the legacy of the Giant Sun Immortal's luck Dao. If I can inherit this legacy, will I be able to replicate the success of the Giant Sun Immortal? Fong Yuan's heart palpitated with excitement. He pondered for a moment before placing Calamity Beckoning Goo into the vermilion bowl again. Although Calamity Beckoning Goo had already formed, Fong Yuan could not refine it yet. Although the connection in his heart was extremely strong, there was still a qualitative difference from truly becoming the owner of Calamity Beckoning Goo. Fong Yuan was still a mortal now, he did not have immortal essence to refine it. This situation was different from when he refined Divine Travel Goo back then. In Three Kings Blessed Land, he refined Fixed Immortal Travel Goo with the land spirit's help, he was the leader. Thus, once Fixed Immortal Travel Goo was born, it became his Goo worm. But it could not be used. If not for the land spirit's help, Fong Yuan would not have been able to teleport to Hu Immortal Blessed Land. And the entire process of refining Calamity Beckoning Goo relied on the backflow of the 88-point Jinyang Tower's heavenly power. Fong Yuan was at most an assistant, he did not have the land spirit's help. Honestly speaking, it was already very good to be able to reach this stage. Only after I become a Goo Immortal can I truly refine it. Before that, I can only leave Calamity Beckoning Goo here. Without becoming a Goo Immortal, there would be no immortal aperture to store Calamity Beckoning Goo. If he took it out publicly, the immortal Goo's aura would spread and it would attract countless covetous people. Fong Yuan was not worried about people like He Lulan or Tai Bai Yunsheng. He had many wolf groups now, and his strength path cultivation was also sufficient. He was mainly worried about Giant Sun Immortals will inside 88-point Jinyang Tower. Earlier, the immortal Goo's aura was weak. Now that the immortal Goo had formed, if he took it out, would it trigger Giant Sun Immortal's will and awaken it? Fong Yuan did not want to take this risk, moreover, his main plan had not been completed yet, he needed to hide and wait. Who would have thought that there would be a rank 7 immortal goo in this nameless valley? But before that, I should first refine a portion of this water pavilion before leaving. Fang Yuan pondered. Water Pavilion was a famous immortal goo house. As a mortal, Fang Yuan actually wanted to refine it. This seemed like a wild fantasy, but it was actually quite feasible. Even something as strong as 88-point Jinyang Tower had loopholes for Fang Yuan to take advantage of. Now that the water pavilion was ownerless, there was naturally an opportunity to take advantage of it. Speaking of which, one had to talk about the essence of goo houses. What was a goo house? Not to mention Fang Yuan's previous life, after rebirth, he had encountered many goo houses. Among them, there was the most common goo house 3-star cave. When retrieved, it would turn into seeds. After planting, it would form a towering tree with an empty space in the middle and 3 layers. There was lizard house goo. It looked like a lizard with different colors. The eye sockets would become windows, the mouth would have a door, it could move freely. There was also the mushroom forest goo house. By planting large numbers of mushroom rune goo, the mushroom houses would form a courtyard. These were mortal goo, and there were also the immortal goo houses 88-point Jinyang Tower and Water Pavilion. Goo houses had developed to this point, they were extremely complex, there were countless of them. But if one traced back to the source, the publicly recognized pioneers were the Green Tortoise Group of 7. These 7 were demonic path goo masters of the olden antiquity era. They were septuplets from the same mother. From birth to death, they had always been in love, advancing and retreating together. They were skilled in defense, they were all rank 5 peak stage goo masters, they even had a defensive killer move called Tortoise House when they worked together. They relied on this move to defend against 3 attacks from goo immortals. They created the famous agreement of 3 moves that went down in history. And this Tortoise House was the first goo house in the history of goo masters. Thus, in essence, a goo house was a killer move formed by the combination of several or even dozens of goo worms. Mushroom Forest Goo House was a classic example. It was a courtyard formed by a large number of mushroom rune goo. 88-point Jinyang Tower was the representative of the peak. It had defense, collection, storage and other effects. It was formed by countless small towers. Divert Disaster Goo was one of the main foundations. After sacrificing the collected wild goo, they would form a heavenly force and form the main building. There was also White Bone Chariot. Back then, Proud Bone Demon Lord Shin Jiao had amazing talent. When he advanced to rank 6, he did not have any immortal goo, so he created a killer move called White Bone Chariot. White Bone Chariot was formed by many rank 5 goo like a white bone will. It was powerful and could match rank 6 immortal goo. White Bone Chariot was actually a goo house. As for 3-star cave, Lizard House Goo, and Great Lizard House Goo, they were all evolved branches. They were the true simplifications of goo houses. Normal goo houses were formed by the combination of several goo worms. As for 3-star cave and the others, they were simplified into one goo, thus their power was greatly reduced. They were more like ordinary goo. And Water Pavilion was a rank 7 immortal goo house. This meant that among the goo worms that formed it, there was at least one rank 7 immortal goo. With my current strength, I cannot refine immortal goo. But I can still refine other mortal goo. This was the source of Fang Yuan's confidence in refining Water Pavilion. There were not many obstacles in the refinement process. Water Pavilion was one of the symbols of Spirit Affinity House. It was controlled by Fairy Imoyao back then. For her lover, Imoyao betrayed the sect and refined Calamity Beckoning Goo, sacrificing herself. This immortal goo house became ownerless. This way, Water Pavilion was an open embrace to Fang Yuan, a little beauty that he could do whatever he wanted. Amazing, there are actually over 3,000 goo worms that formed Water Pavilion. And each goo worm is interlinked with each other, faintly resonating with each other. The core is the rank 7 water fusion goo. It can allow the goo master to completely fuse with water. As long as the water exists, the goo master will not die. Other than that, there are 2 supplementary immortal goo, the rank 6 movement immortal goo Worldly Wave Trace, and the Wisdom Path immortal goo Delight in Water and Mountain Goo. The refinement process was the process of gaining a deeper understanding of Water Pavilion. The refinement of immortal goo far surpassed Fang Yuan's ability, he could forget about it. What he started with were rank 1 and rank 2 mortal goo. After spending 6 hours, Fang Yuan felt dizzy as he refined 500 rank 1 and 2 mortal goo for his own use. In this way, I will have 10% control over the water pavilion. Even if I am discovered, with this 10% control, I can obstruct the enemy for some time. This time is enough for me to be alerted and rush over. After another 2 hours, Fang Yuan's control increased to 13%. The further he went, the more difficult it was to refine. It is a pity that I have spring-autumn cicada, it is like a ticking time bomb. I cannot use time path instant success goo to assist in the refinement, otherwise the results would be much more than this. Fang Yuan's head was spinning, he knew he had reached his limit, the rank 5 peak stage primeval essence in his 2 apertures was almost expended. But just as he was about to retract his mind, a figure suddenly appeared in his mind. Time passes quickly, I have finally met you today by fate. Following this indistinct sigh, a beautiful woman with a black veil over her face and eyes as dark as the night appeared in Fang Yuan's mind. This is Fairy Mo Yao's will, when did it enter my mind? Fang Yuan was shocked. So much time had passed, Mo Yao was not a venerable, but she still had her will, this showed how powerful her cultivation was back then. Fang Yuan was already prepared, but Fairy Mo Yao clearly had a special method, she could actually make her will enter Fang Yuan's mind without a trace. This method was no small matter. Mo Yao's will entered his mind, if she had evil intentions and attacked, Fang Yuan would not be able to bear the consequences. Fang Yuan was not a wisdom path expert, only wisdom path goo masters had the ability to restrain such wills. There was an even more crucial point. When a person thinks, they would first have thoughts. These thoughts would collide in their mind and change, creating new thoughts. This was the result of thinking. Right now, Mo Yao's will entered Fang Yuan's mind. She could clearly sense every thought that Fang Yuan had. If Mo Yao's will knew about spring-autumn cicada, what would happen? Don't be afraid, fated person, I have no intention of harming you. I just want to ask you a question. Mo Yao's will said faintly. Fang Yuan did not need to guess to know what she wanted to ask, he immediately told her about Bo Qing's failure in tribulation. Hearing this grievous news, Mo Yao's will shook and was on the verge of collapse. Fang Yuan was secretly happy, but to his disappointment, Mo Yao's will managed to maintain her form. Her eyes, which were as dark as the night, were filled with tears. Fairy Mo Yao's expression was very complex, there was sorrow and also relief. Just like in her poem, time has passed, love and hatred have lasted for a long time, the love and hatred between her and Bo Qing was definitely a long and complicated story. Fated person, since you could refine Calamity Beckoning Goo and found this place to refine Water Pavilion, you must already know the gist of it. Since he is already dead, let everything pass. Sigh, maybe this is the fortune of all living beings. Chapter 575. The sacred palace was shrouded in colorful lights. The multicolored light shone brightly, illuminating the surrounding 100 li. Looking at the top of the sacred palace, 88-point Xinyang Tower had already formed 2 floors, there was an endless stream of people entering and exiting daily. Retracting his gaze, Fang Yuan lightly closed the window. Ever since he refined Calamity Beckoning Goo and returned from Water Pavilion, half a month had already passed. During this period of time, He Lulan opened 88-point Xinyang Tower to the public without charging any fees, allowing people to enter and exit freely. 88-point Xinyang Tower, Giant Sun Immortal's inheritance ground. To Goo Masters, its attraction was astonishing. Countless Goo Masters with Giant Sun's bloodline flocked in, even if they could not pass the round, they would take pride in seeing it and broadening their horizons. Especially after 88-point Xinyang Tower mutated and formed 2 floors, it stimulated everyone's desire to explore it. As for outsiders, they could only enter and exit with guest tokens. The guest medallion was a one-time consumable, and it could only be obtained after clearing the checkpoint. Up until now, there were only 7 guest tokens in everyone's hands. Each one was sold at an astronomical price, but countless goo master experts without Giant Sun's bloodline were still scrambling for them. Fong Yuan already had the glass owner token, he could freely enter and exit 88-point Jinyang Tower, he could even enter the treasure room. But to deceive others, not long ago, he still spent a huge price to buy a guest token. Young lad, I advise you to prepare the killer move ink transformation I taught you. This way, after you enter the central control room, you will be able to get twice the results with half the effort. A female voice resounded in Fong Yuan's mind. It was none other than Fairy Mo Yao's Will, who had stealthily sneaked in. Fong Yuan heard this and frowned, he snorted in his heart, this killer move of yours is already outdated. Some of the goo worms among them are already extinct. Now that I want to collect them, I will need to spend some effort, how can I be in a hurry? Mo Yao's Will chuckled, young man, you are quite fortunate to possess who immortal blessed land. We should make good use of jewel yellow skies and purchase these goo from there, it is not difficult. Fong Yuan's frown deepened. He unlocked the cipher, inherited Di Chou's inheritance, and even successfully refined Calamity Beckoning Goo, but he attracted the trouble of Mo Yao's Will. Mo Yao's Will was currently residing in his mind, becoming a huge hidden danger. Once Fong Yuan thought about it, he would have an idea. Fairy Mo Yao's Will was able to see through these thoughts and thus understand Fong Yuan's secret. In this half a month, she understood many of Fong Yuan's secrets, including who immortal blessed land. Right now, Fong Yuan could only use the space thought goo to generate thoughts to think. With space thought goo as the main goo and other goo worms as support, the thoughts formed had the profoundness of emptiness, even if Mo Yao's Will could capture it, he might not be able to read the contents of the thoughts. But this situation was only temporary. Wills were above thoughts, Mo Yao's Will was residing in Fong Yuan's mind, the more she interacted with these empty thoughts, she would gradually become familiar with them, and eventually, Fong Yuan's defenses would not be able to stop her. Young man, you are so young, but you have so many secrets. This is really interesting. Mo Yao's Will floated in the air, sinking and floating. She covered her mouth and laughed, her eyes were moving and her body was beautiful, as expected of the Fairy of Spirit Affinity House of that era. After interacting with Fong Yuan for a long time, she gradually became more active, showing an extremely curious nature that liked to pry into other people's secrets. Spirit Affinity House's generation of fairies were all rare beauties, they had both looks and talent, they were ethereal and elegant, like hibiscus flowers emerging from the water. But Mo Yao was different, her deep and beautiful eyes contained a natural craftiness, if placed in the demonic path, she would be a living demoness. She transformed into an enchanting long dress, wrapping her body in all the right places. Looking at the transparent bubble-like thoughts around her, she casually grabbed one of them. Next, with a soft pop sound, she exerted some strength and crushed this thought. But she did not gain anything, this thought's content was only the simple meaning of the word eat. She gasped, her plump lips curling up into a sexy arc, young man, you are not cute at all. Every time you think about a problem, you will think of all sorts of random thoughts and cover up the main point. But don't you know, in this way, it has aroused my curiosity even more. You are so old, you still have the face to call yourself big sister? Fong Yuan sneered, threatening, you are already dead, you should stop. Don't think that I cannot do anything to you just because you entered my mind. Who knows, at the next moment, I might destroy this will of yours. So scary. Mo Yao patted her towering chest, giggling without a care, but in this half a month, you attacked me 28 times, using 19 different methods. You not only cultivate enslavement and strength path, but also wisdom path? Killing intent surged in Fong Yuan's heart. Ayaya, young man, don't be like this. Sensing Fong Yuan's sharp killing intent, Mo Yao shook her finger, I am your benefactor, didn't Calamity Beckoning Goo become your immortal goo now? You are still immortal, but you already have an immortal goo, this is an incredible achievement. Don't worry, as long as you return Water Pavilion to Spirit Affinity House, my dying wish will be fulfilled, and this will have no reason to continue existing. Return the rank 7 Immortal Goo House Water Pavilion? This was already in his mouth, how could Fang Yuan spit it out? Fang Yuan was naturally unwilling, but he had no other choice. Not to mention the remnant of Mo Yao's will in his mind, there was another remnant of Mo Yao's will guarding the riverside pavilion. Speaking of which, this Mo Yao was really amazing. In the historical records, she was a refinement path grandmaster. But her attainment in soul path and wisdom path seemed to be even higher. Fang Yuan's dozens of thought encirclement were easily resolved by Mo Yao. Fang Yuan was having a headache now. He found that even though he inherited Di Chou inheritance, he did not earn much. He took a huge risk and invested a lot to refine Gu. Even though he refined Calamity Beckoning Gu, he could not use it. Mo Yao's will even entered his mind. In fear of harming him, it became a huge burden and hindrance. If I had known this, I would not have inherited this bullshit Di Chou inheritance. Fang Yuan did not hide this thought from Mo Yao. Mo Yao easily learned of it. Young man, you are wrong to think like this. These days, just the refinement path killer move ink transformation that I taught you has immeasurable value. Didn't you want to take advantage of 88-point Xinyang Tower's loophole? You really have guts, comparable to me back then. Don't worry, I will help you, as long as you obediently return Water Pavilion to Spirit Affinity House. Mo Yao consoled with a smile. Calamity Beckoning Gu is mine, Water Pavilion is mine too, even 88-point Xinyang Tower will be mine. You are just a will, how can you stop a living person like me? Since they had already fought dozens of times, Fang Yuan directly rejected her. But this time Mo Yao did not laugh, her gaze shone as she recalled something. She had a lonely expression as she sighed faintly. Sigh, are all you men like this? Even if you do something wrong, you are still so confident and righteous. In this world, what is right and wrong? Who is right and who is wrong? It is just that everyone's path is different. Mo Yao's expression changed as she laughed. Young man, your answer is quite interesting. However, I once heard another answer that was much more domineering than yours. I still remember what he said, in this world, as long as I think I do something, I am right. Those who are different from me are wrong. Don't you think this is domineering? Fang Yuan's gaze shone. Sword Immortal Bo Qing said this. Unfortunately, he did not take that step in the end. These words made Mo Yao fall into silence. She had a sorrowful expression as she closed her eyes, as if her memories were surging out, her long and thick eyelashes were trembling slightly. She concealed her figure and vanished from Fang Yuan's mind. Damn it, it's like this again. Fang Yuan gritted his teeth. Every time Mo Yao's will concealed herself, it was as if she did not exist. No matter how Fang Yuan searched his mind, he could not find a trace of her. Mo Yao's attainment in soul path and wisdom path far surpassed Fang Yuan's. As a result, Fang Yuan's mind had instead become her base camp. But this search did not leave Fang Yuan empty-handed. In his mind, he found a thought from Mo Yao's will. The content of the thought shook Fang Yuan's mind. This was a killer move. It was called Six-Arm Heavenly Zombie King. In order to find a way to fuse enslavement and strength path, Fang Yuan had racked his brains and obtained an initial result. It was the strength path killer move, Four-Arm Earth King. Using this move, during the final battle of the Imperial Court contest, he slaughtered everyone and sent Ma Tribe's army into the abyss of defeat. He pushed He Lulon into Imperial Court blessed land. But Four-Arm Earth King was only a hastily created killer move. It had many flaws. Fang Yuan modified it on the basis and created the killer move Four-Arm Wind King. Next, he exchanged for the crucial borrow strength Gu in the treasure room of 88-point Xinyang Tower. This allowed the killer move Four-Arm Wind King to be further modified. After Mo Yao's will entered his mind, Fang Yuan purposely exposed a portion of his secrets. Among them was this killer move, as well as the idea of modifying it. Amazing! Fang Yuan praised. With his foundation and Fairy Mo Yao's foundation, the killer move Six-Arm Heavenly Zombie King was already close to perfection. It used Borrow Strength Gu as the core, 6 Flying Zombie Gu as support, as well as 36 other Gu worms. The combination was ingenious and the structure was strict. Even Fang Yuan could not stop praising it. But, I know about the 5 great flying zombie goo. This killer move actually needs a 6th flying zombie goo. What goo is it? Chapter 576. In the dark secret room, the fragrance of sandalwood lingered in the air. Fong Yuan sat cross-legged on a cushion, holding an east window goo in his hand. This goo was an information path goo. It was rank 4 and looked like a ladybug, but the carapace on its back was square like a window lattice. It was used to store important information. This goo was something Fong Yuan had specially purchased from Jewel Yellow Skies at a great cost. The contents inside were all related to will. Ever since Emo Yao's will entered his mind, Fong Yuan had been purchasing these relevant information, spending many immortal yuan stones. This east window goo was not the first one. After a long while, Fong Yuan slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was as cold as a spring. With so much precious information, he had a deeper understanding of will. Thought, will, emotion, these 3 came from the same origin. The first 2 belonged to wisdom path, but they were also related to other paths. Wisdom path, when it was first created, was a path for goo masters to pursue wisdom. When a person thinks, thoughts would appear in their mind. These thoughts would collide with each other, merge or cancel each other out, forming new thoughts. This was the result of thinking. These thoughts were divided into different categories. They were different from each other and had their own specialties. Among them, the most famous was obsession. The obsession of a goo immortal before death would combine with the heavenly power of heaven and earth, forming a land spirit in the blessed land. According to these thoughts, goo masters would create countless related goo worms, like the star thought goo that Dongfang Yuliang had once used, the empty thought goo that Fong Yuan was using now, and the divine thought goo that goo immortals often used. Some thoughts would gather together and form will. As the saying goes, can only be understood, cannot be expressed with words. Will could not be expressed with words. The rhythm of will had already surpassed the limits of words. It could only be experienced with one's heart, using one's own spirituality. Initially, wisdom path goo masters created providence goo. Using this to comprehend the mysteries of the great Tao of heaven and earth, they could further comprehend the laws of heaven and earth, thus advancing their own cultivation. Later, as it developed, there were killing intent goo, free will goo, wish goo, complacency goo, malicious intent goo, painting intent goo, and so on. Among them, the most famous was the legendary accidental goo recorded in the legends of Renzu. Following the development of wisdom path, generations of goo masters continued to explore it. They found, when several wills intertwined, they would turn into emotions. Aphrodisiac goo, tender emotion goo, emotion poem goo, and others were all part of this path. The Tao of enchantment was derived from this. Among them, the most famous one also came from the legends of Renzu, love goo. Nian, Yi, Qing. Fong Yuan sighed. The more he understood one thing. With his current wisdom path foundation, he could not get rid of Emo Yao's will. The gap between them was too big. For example, in terms of willpower, Fong Yuan was like a mound, while Emo Yao's willpower was like a mountain. As for exactly how tall and majestic this mountain was, it was still shrouded in a thick layer of smoke, so it was hard to tell. Emo Yao's attainment had already surpassed Fong Yuan's level of understanding. In these days of contact and probing, she had left a deep impression on Fong Yuan, giving him a feeling of unfathomable and high respect. Facing such a problem, if he could not get rid of it, what could he do? Sitting cross-legged on the cushion, he pondered for a while. Fong Yuan's gaze turned cold as he made up his mind. He sent his consciousness into his own mind. The other goo masters in the group also looked at Ma Hongyun with gentler gazes. One of them even patted Ma Hongyun's shoulder, consoling him, "Kid, you are quite unlucky. But don't worry, you can follow us to kill the Earth Chief Beast, you will earn a lot." "Yes, yes, yes." Ma Hongyun nodded, bowing and smiling apologetically. He had a fortuitous encounter and saved Ma Jie. After He tribe recruited Ma tribe, he had a fortuitous encounter and changed his name to Ma Hongyun, which allowed him to cultivate better. Right now, he was only a rank 1 goo master. His aptitude was neither low nor high. He could enter 88-point Jinyang Tower of course, but with his strength, it was useless even if he went in. These days in the sacred palace, he had been mingling with wild teams, going out to hunt, paying for daily expenses, and accumulating yuan stone to aid his cultivation. Chapter 577. Rumble, the ground shook, a flood of wolf groups appeared in the sky, they were endless, like a vast river, surging forward. 10,000 wolves sprinted, wolf groups mixed together. There were wind wolves, sprinting like they were flying. There were water wolves, pure white as snow. There were night wolves, pitch black and strong. There were turtleback wolves, sturdy and steady. Vermilion flame wolves, blazing with flames. 100 Wolf King, 1,000 Wolf King, myriad Wolf King led the pack. There were mutated wolves, they were very eye-catching. For example, blood forest wolves, they carried a bone forest on their back, they were tall like mountains. Shark fin wolves, they were armored like elephants, they could move on land and water. There was also frenzied wolves, silver-gray 3 eyes, they were battle maniacs. Imperial Court blessed land, in the faint golden sky, azure wolf groups were galloping in the sky, howling, they were extraordinary. Fong Yuan sat steadily on the back of an azure myriad wolf king, the wild winds could not move his determined face. His eyes were dark and deep, he was looking down at his feet, his thoughts unfathomable. Even though the wolf groups were scattered when they first entered Imperial Court blessed land, they were scattered all over the blessed land. But Fong Yuan had already issued a mission, ever since he entered the blessed land, other than recalling the old wolf groups, he had also recruited countless new wolves. Right now, the wolf group below him was like a sea, the scale reaching 500,000. At this stage, he was truly at the peak of the mortal world. At the start of the Imperial Court contest, he, Jiang Baoya, Ma Zun and the rest were called the 5 Great Beast Kings. After the Imperial Court contest ended, not to mention the world's recognition, he was already the #1 enslavement path master of the current generation in Northern Plains. Other than his enslavement path attainment, he also had shocking strength path methods and the strength of a flying master. He was truly awe-inspiring. Who did not respect Wolf King Chang Shanin? Who did not fear him? In the entire Northern Plains, how many people could be his match? But at this moment, in Fong Yuan's mind, there was a voice attacking him. Young lad, you actually want to combine enslavement and strength path, you have quite the ambition. But I advise you to give up on this thought as soon as possible. Mo Yao's will smiled, enslavement and strength path are clearly separated. The combination of enslavement and power had been a difficult problem for thousands of years. It's already very difficult for you to dual cultivate. Why don't you change as soon as possible and retreat in the face of difficulties? Why do you keep doing things that are strenuous and unrewarding? Sai, sister, is an experienced person. You have to know that there are countless paths and sections. The strength of a Gu master does not lie in how many paths they walk, but in who walks further. Mo Yao tried to persuade him, but Fong Yuan snorted coldly and rejected him coldly. When there's a will, there's a way. What's there to be afraid of? The reason why the confluence of enslavement and strength has been a problem for thousands of years is because there has never been a person like me, Fong Yuan. Sooner or later, I will dominate the world and leave my name in the annals of history. I will be comparable to the likes of Xingqiu, Red Lotus, and Paradise. Star Constellation, Red Lotus, and Paradise Earth were all rank 9 Gu venerables. In the long history of the human race, after countless years, there were less than 10 of them. Fong Yuan was still a mortal, yet he dreamed of becoming such a figure. It was like an ant dreaming of becoming an elephant. Such ambition and tone left Mo Yao's will dumbfounded for a moment. Roar! Kill all these earth chief beasts. Where are the healing Gu masters? Someone is injured, come and help. Beast groups roared and Gu masters shouted. The small-scale battle had already reached its most crucial moment. On the small battlefield, there were pits everywhere and severed limbs and blood splattered everywhere. 5 to 6 Gu masters surrounded the Earth Chief Beast King and engaged in a fierce battle. Around them, there were large numbers of Earth Chief Beast corpses. These Earth Chief Beasts had human bodies and snake tails, their faces were like bats, their noses were pointed upwards and their ears were large. Their bodies were black and they had flesh armor. There were 5 to 6 flesh whips on their chest, the shortest were 10 feet long, while the longest were over 20 feet long. The flesh whips were like hands and agile like snakes, they could be swung with great force and could be used for both offense and defense. Earth Chief Beasts lived underground, but they were not deep underground, they often built their nests in shallow layers. They had high value, be it their eyeballs, fur, or tails, they were all rare goo refinement materials. What was even rarer was the length of the flesh whips on their bodies, the longer the better. Flesh whips over 20 feet were hard to find, they were priceless. Earth Chief Beasts were now rare in northern plains. But in Imperial Court Blessed Land, there were many of them. For example, this area had an area of 10,000 li, it was filled with Earth Chief Beast groups. Wealth moved people's hearts, and because this place was not far from the sacred palace, many goo masters often came here in groups to hunt. This team that was engaged in a fierce battle was one of them. Most of the goo masters in the group had hunted Earth Chief Beast groups 3 or 4 times, they had rich experience. But this time, they met with trouble. Although they only attracted 100 Earth Chief Beast group, it was under their control. But to think that this Beast King was not an ordinary 100 Beast King, it was an old 1,000 Beast King. Although this Beast King could not fight and was old and sickly, the wild goo parasite on its body was a genuine rank 3 goo. Among mortal goo masters, rank 1 was an apprentice, they had just started and had weak battle strength, they were the most common. Rank 2 was the backbone, the cornerstone, they were very common. Rank 3 was called elders, clan elders, they were the core of a force, their numbers were decreasing rapidly. Rank 4 was the leader of a force, the leader of tens of thousands. Rank 5 was called the peak of mortals, they were even rarer. The Earth Chief 1,000 Beast King itself was not a threat, but it had several rank 3 wild goo, such battle strength was beyond the ability of this group. If not for the leader Jiangdong's resolute and experienced nature at the start of the battle, he would have decisively led some experts to charge into the beast group and stall the Earth Chief Beast King, while the others slaughtered the Earth Chief Beasts. Otherwise, the Goo Master group would have been defeated already. Everyone, let's work harder. This old beast is almost at its limit, we can win if we persevere. Jiangdong moved and shouted loudly, raising the morale of the group. Everyone's replies were mixed, they barely raised their spirits. From the start of the battle until now, it had already been an hour. The Goo Master's primeval essence was almost exhausted, but fortunately, Northern Plains was a common custom, most of these Goo Masters cultivated the strength path. The Goo Masters fought with all their strength, they mainly used close combat, they would only use their primeval essence to save themselves and others as a last resort. Roar! Right at this time, the old Beast King suddenly swung its snake tail, causing the air to explode. The snake tail ruthlessly struck a Goo Master, sending him flying. When he landed on the ground, this Goo Master's ribs were all shattered, he could not be more dead. Humans had intelligence, but wild beasts also had craftiness. The old Beast King was indeed weak, but a broken ship still had 3 pounds of nails. At this moment, it suddenly exploded and killed one person. The Goo Masters were stunned, their morale plummeting. Oh no, it was a stalemate to begin with, now that we have lost one person, I have less than 20% primeval essence in my aperture, what should I do? Jiangdong's eyes turned, he immediately thought of escaping. This hunting group was only formed at the last minute, escaping at the last moment might harm his reputation. But compared to his life, what was his reputation? Northern Plains people loved to kill, they were brave by nature, but they were not fools. In the past, it was difficult, I could only fight to survive. Now that I have entered Imperial Court Blessed Land, there are resources everywhere, it is time for me to accumulate my strength, how can I sacrifice my life here? I have old and young at home, although my hunting results are good these days, the yuan stones I obtained are only enough to support my cultivation. That lad at home is about to step on the path of cultivation in half a year, so, sorry everyone. Jiang Dong's gaze flickered, he suddenly retreated and instilled his remaining primeval essence into his movement goo worm. His sleeves tore through the air, with a soft swoosh, he left in a cloud of dust. The remaining goo masters were stunned, their leader had already escaped, what was the point of fighting? Immediately, everyone scattered, their morale falling to rock bottom. The Earth Chief Beast King roared and chased relentlessly. Fuck! Jiang Dong turned around and cursed, his soul almost flying out of his body. This old Earth Chief Beast King did not chase anyone, it only chased after him. Jiang Dong's methods were ruthless and fierce, it bore a grudge against him. Oh no, if this goes on, I will die. As time passed, primeval essence was expended rapidly, Jiang Dong fell into despair. Lord Jiang Dong, run! Right at this time, a voice could be heard from afar. Jiang Dong heard this and turned around, seeing a young man standing in front of him, he recognized him as Ma Hongyun. He had joined the group not long ago and only had rank 1 cultivation, he was a logistics goo master with low battle strength. When the battle started, he was sent out as a scouting pawn. What a foolish lad! Jiang Dong was overjoyed, he immediately changed his direction and ran towards Ma Hongyun. Ma Hongyun's eyes opened wide, seeing the old Earth Chief Beast King chasing, he could not help but want to warn Jiang Dong. But he hadn't expected that Jiang Dong would lead the old Earth Chief Beast King directly towards him. The people's hearts and righteousness were weak. Not to mention others, just take Fang Yuan's current situation for example, who cares about your bullshit resentment, I will destroy whoever comes. Whoever is not pleasing to the eye, I will slaughter them all. Looking down on all living beings, trampling on the people's hearts, free and unbridled like the wind. But Fang Yuan was determined to pursue the great Tao and had no interest in slaughtering ants. Today's large-scale massacre was only a small step towards his grand goal. Thinking of this goal, Fang Yuan slowly opened his eyes. Roar! A beast's roar resounded through the clouds. In the distance, a hill rose up from the ground, and with a boom, soil and rocks flew everywhere as a 50-zhang tall Earth Chief Myriad Beast King jumped out. Fang Yuan's eyes flashed with a cold light as he sneered, "It's you." He immediately commanded the wolf group to attack. For a moment, thoughts flew in his mind like bubbles and drizzles, endlessly. Looking down from the sky, 10,000 wolves were galloping like an endless tide, the scene was extremely spectacular. When approaching the Earth Chief Myriad Beast King, the wolf group suddenly split into several groups, each group like ants climbing an elephant. At the same time, azure wolves howled down, circling around the Earth Chief Myriad Beast King like a flock of birds circling a tree. The Earth Chief Myriad Beast King jumped into the wolf group, sweeping left and right, wolf blood splattered and wolf corpses littered the ground. Its large feet left behind sinister bloody pits. Fang Yuan had a smile on his face, sitting upright in the clouds. Under his command, the wolf group advanced and retreated in a well-defined manner, rushing forward in waves, forming a battle of ants devouring an elephant. The Earth Chief Myriad Beast King roared again and again, charging left and right, causing large amounts of damage to the wolf group. It was truly brave. In his mind, Mo Yao gasped, slightly surprised at Fang Yuan's enslavement path attainment. TSK, to think this kid has so much talent, at such a young age, he can control the myriad of wolves as if he was breathing, commanding them calmly like his own arm, fighting strong enemies with a battle of attrition, he has deep mastery of enslavement path. This is the mastery of a master level. But he was only slightly surprised. Mo Yao was experienced and knowledgeable, she was not an ordinary Gu immortal, she was a certain generation's fairy of spirit affinity house, her vision was very high, and in her memory, there were many young masters like Fang Yuan. The battle lasted for a while, the Earth Chief Myriad Beast King roared again and again, exhausted by the wolf group, it was no longer ferocious. Large numbers of Earth Chief Myriad Beast Kings emerged from underground, joining the battle. Fang Yuan smiled lightly, he had expected this and commanded calmly. This wolf opened its huge mouth and licked with its tongue, directly licking away all the grass within 100 steps. Ma Hongyun mixed with the Earth Chief Myriad Beast King's corpse and became food in the Blood Forest Wolf's stomach. If it had continued, Ma Hongyun would have been digested by the Blood Forest Wolf sooner or later, turning into a pile of wolf dung. But after the battle with the Earth Chief Myriad Beast King, this Blood Forest Wolf was besieged and died on the battlefield, its stomach split open and air leaked in. Ma Hongyun dizzily woke up and hurriedly crawled out. The battle had already ended, the battlefield was littered with beast corpses. Occasionally, there were heavily injured wild beasts that had yet to die howling and panting, making the surroundings even more deathly silent. Ma Hongyun's panting was enough, his stamina gradually recovered and the thick smell of blood filled his nose. He knew something was wrong. I have to leave this place quickly. Not long later, many wild beasts will be attracted by the smell of blood. Ma Hongyun grew up in northern plains. This bit of survival knowledge was already ingrained in his bones. He quickly stood up and looked towards the direction of the sacred palace, immediately setting off. But after a few steps, he stopped. His gaze was attracted by a goo worm. This was a wild goo from the Earth Chief Myriad Beast's corpse. When the Earth Chief Myriad Beast died, the wild goo would either be destroyed or fly away. But this wild goo was caught by the broken bones and could not fly away. This should be a rank 2, that's something goo. Although Ma Hongyun could not remember clearly, it did not hinder him from knowing the value of this goo worm. Good goo, good goo. Even if I can't use it, I can sell it for a lot of yuan stone. He said clearly, the human heart is unfathomable, greed is hard to satisfy. Even with Lord Father's announcement, there are still many goo masters sneaking into the battlefield to steal beast corpses or wild goo. These days, tribe leader Gu Guang and I have worked together to capture over 180 goo masters. They are all locked up in the underground prison. But there are still many crafty ones who sneak in and out when we are unprepared, reaping without sowing. I have already obtained a lot of information through interrogations. As long as Father gives the order, I will definitely do my best to capture these fish that escaped the net and bring them to justice. Although Chang Jiyu was kneeling on the ground, his upper body was straight. His nose was straight, his eyebrows were black, his back was broad, and his waist was thin. He spoke in an upright tone, giving off a heroic aura. Fong Yuan smiled. He had no interest in capturing the fish that escaped the net, saying, "The battlefield is vast, there are no gates or passes to guard, it is already not bad to capture so many goo masters. You two have done well. As for the others, it is their ability to make them steal, there is no need to pursue this matter. Step down and bring these captives to me." "Yes, subordinate, son, obeys." Not long later, the two escorted close to 200 captives over. According to Fong Yuan's orders, a large hall was specially set aside to imprison these goo masters. "All of you, go out and close the door, guard the surroundings, no outsiders are allowed to enter within 100 steps. If there are experts, inform me in advance." Fong Yuan dismissed all the other members, leaving only him and the captives behind. The door was closed and there were no lights, the hall was plunged into darkness. This no doubt increased the unease and anxiety in the captives' hearts. "Lang Wangde, what is your intention in capturing us? Do you know I am a He tribe member? In terms of relationship, Lord He Lulan is my cousin." A young goo master among the captives shouted. Fong Yuan sneered, activating his goo worm and flicking his finger. Bam! With a soft sound, his head exploded like a watermelon, with white brain matter flowing out. Everyone erupted into an uproar. They were frightened, immediately panicking. Soon after, with one person taking the lead, countless people responded and knelt on the ground. "Lang Wangde, this lowly one deserves to die. Of all the things I shouldn't have done, to steal Lord's spoils of war, this lowly one was blinded by lard. I beg Lord to spare us, please spare us Lord." Fong Yuan was a fierce person, but now, without saying a word, he killed people at every turn. It was truly cruel. These goo masters were not experts, most of them were rank 1 or 2, they did not have good backgrounds and could not enter 88-point Jinyang Tower. Facing a rank 5 peak stage expert like Fang Yuan, trying to resist was courting death. They could only beg for mercy. Noisy! Fang Yuan lightly shouted, his voice resounding in the hall. With a wave of his hand, he killed the person who was begging for mercy the most. Whoever dares to make noise, I will kill them. Fang Yuan lightly spoke, his voice was not loud, but it lingered in everyone's ears. The entire hall was as silent as cicadas in winter. It was so silent that even a needle dropping could be heard. Fang Yuan was satisfied. He asked Mo Yao's will in his mind, what should I do next? Mo Yao lightly laughed, this is easy, little brother, just listen to my instructions and place the goo worms. She directly called Fang Yuan little brother. Her tone revealed a sense of intimacy. Fang Yuan coldly snorted in his heart, but did not refute, instead following Mo Yao's instructions. Every time Mo Yao instructed, a goo worm would fly out from Fang Yuan. These goo worms were the goo worms that formed the killer move 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King, Earth Chief Zombie Goo, Azura Zombie Goo, Heavenly Demon Zombie Goo, and so on. They were either thrown onto the main beam or placed in a corner. One after another, goo worms streaked across the sky, leaving behind colorful shadows in the eyes of the captives. These people were terrified, but did not dare to ask anything. They stood on the spot, not daring to move. Like little chicks. The headless corpses of the 2 people killed by Fang Yuan were still lying at their feet, blood gushed out from their broken necks, and the smell of blood gradually spread in the hall. After arranging these goo worms, Fang Yuan followed Mo Yao's instructions and poured his primeval essence. The order of the infusion was very particular, suddenly choosing the goo worms in the southeast corner, suddenly going straight to the northwest corner, and suddenly moving to the left and right sides. Sometimes it was the main goo, sometimes it was the supplementary goo. Even Fang Yuan was confused, he was inwardly vigilant. When all the goo worms were activated, the lumps of light gradually linked together, quickly forming a yellow light that covered the interior of the hall, forming a lighthouse that enveloped all the captives in the hall. This is... Fang Yuan's heart shook. His pupils dilated. In his mind, Mo Yao's will laughed lightly, explaining, this is a goo house. Fang Yuan could not help but blurt out, this 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King, is its essence a goo house? Mo Yao chuckled, foolish kid, don't you know the essence of a goo house is a killer move, 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King is a killer move. Goo houses are also killer moves, their essence is the same, naturally they can be converted. Fang Yuan's eyes flickered with brilliance, he sensed Mo Yao's hidden meaning and immediately asked, according to what you said, doesn't that mean all killer moves can be converted into goo houses? Of course. Mo Yao replied resolutely, man is the spirit of all living beings, goo are the essence of heaven and earth, the carrier of the great Tao. A goo worm has a single effect. What is a killer move? It is to combine different goo worms and stack their effects together, either making one side of the effect peerless, or making the effect complex, taking into account many aspects. Mo Yao did not go overboard, whether he could comprehend it or not, that was up to Fang Yuan himself. Fang Yuan was dazed, inspiration flashed in his mind continuously. Mo Yao's words seemed to have pierced through that layer of window paper, raising his vision to a whole new level. That's right. The essence of a goo house is a killer move, it is just that the form is fixed. For example, 88-point Jinyang Tower, or Water Pavilion. The former covers the imperial court, alludes to northern plains, plundering resources and storing inheritances. The latter is faintly discernible and can be used for defense and storage. These functions cannot be provided by a single goo worm, it is the combination of these goo worms by goo masters. Looking at it from another angle, a goo house is only a form of a killer move. Since 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King can only be used on me, why can't it form a goo house and affect many people at the same time? Thinking of this, Fang Yuan looked in front of him again. In the goo house, the bodies of those goo master captives had already started to change. What happened to me? Everyone screamed in fear, they found that their skin was rapidly growing golden scales. Ah, so painful, so painful. Itchy, too itchy, I can't take it anymore, just kill me. Soon, they fell to the ground one after another, some scratching their skin and tearing their clothes into shreds, some arched their backs like prawns, clutching their chests as blood flowed out of their mouths and noses. What is this thing? Why are there monstrous arms growing out of my back? Not long after, the screams of the people reached their peak, shaking the roof tiles. Arms grew out one after another, each arm was different, some were dark green, some were dark purple, some were yellow, and they were of different thicknesses, looking deformed and ugly. But Feng Yuan did not care about such minor details. He squinted his eyes, feeling the dangerous aura of the Gu masters. He felt joy in his heart, but also fear. Feng Yuan thought of this and laughed coldly in his mind. Willpower wasn't something that could be formed just by gathering all sorts of random thoughts together. But wills were indeed the combination of countless thoughts. Once a will thinks of a problem, it would use its own thoughts to collide with each other, creating new thoughts and obtaining the result of the thought. Mo Yao was a refinement grandmaster. Her will also inherited the attainment level of a refinement grandmaster. But she created a flawed six-arm heavenly zombie king, not because her abilities were limited, but because she was worried about her own safety. She did not dare to think deeply. At this point, Feng Yuan had already found the weakness of Mo Yao's will. A living person thinking endlessly would harm their body, not to mention a remnant will. The more the will thinks, the more it would consume itself, and the weaker it would become. If Mo Yao was still alive, the thoughts consumed by her will would be replenished in her mind. But the current situation was, Mo Yao was already dead. Why was her will sleeping in Water Pavilion, only waking up when Feng Yuan came in? Because her will could not be awake at all times. When she was awake, her thoughts were agile, that meant she could think. The more she thought, the weaker her will would become, and eventually, it would die. Looking at 88-point Jinyang Tower, this grand and majestic rank 8 immortal Gu house contained Giant Sun Immortal's will. But even someone as strong as Giant Sun Immortal's will was slumbering now. Be it Giant Sun's will or Mo Yao's will, they were rootless. Without any replenishment, they would only become weaker. Although my wisdom path attainment is very shallow, I have a huge advantage. That is, I am still alive. Currently, even though I cannot match Mo Yao's will, as long as I have enough time to maintain this stalemate, the result will be my victory. Thinking of this, Feng Yuan stopped thinking about this. After all, he had a portion of Mo Yao's will in his mind. Thinking too much leads to more thoughts. Even though he was using space thought Gu now, there was no guarantee that Mo Yao would find a flaw. Sigh. In the hall, Feng Yuan sighed faintly. Mo Yao's will was a huge burden. When Feng Yuan thought about problems, he had to be wary. Originally, sneaking into Imperial Court blessed land and seizing landscape as before Immortal Gu had already caused him to rack his brains. Now, with such a huge enemy lurking in his mind, Feng Yuan had to be cautious. Every time he thought about a problem, he would have to mix in other thoughts. If it was in the past, he would be able to do this by just calming his mind and concentration. But when Feng Yuan did it now, he felt both mentally and physically exhausted, with a feeling of mental exhaustion. Mo Yao's will heard this sigh, but misunderstood Feng Yuan. He consoled, he, little brother, you are still young. You should work hard, why are you sighing? If there are too many of them, they will interfere with the corpse energy. At best, the killer move's power will fall. At worst, the killer move will collapse. If there are too few of them, the duration of the battle will decrease sharply, and its practicality will fall greatly. Feng Yuan listened, nodding on the surface, expressing his agreement, but he scoffed inwardly. Mo Yao's words were like changing the topic. The fusion of life and death was indeed an eternal problem. From start to finish, no one had ever heard of someone dying and living at the same time. Life and death could not coexist. But Mo Yao was a refinement path grandmaster. Could he not think of other killer moves? Why must he use six-arm heavenly zombie king? It was just that she had modified the killer move 4-arm Wind King that Fang Yuan provided to save time and effort in thinking. Fang Yuan was sure that with her Grandmaster attainment level, Mo Yao could completely start from scratch and think of a completely new killer move. Mo Yao is a variant human, an Inkman. If he is not of our race, his heart is definitely different. Thus, these last days, she has used over 1,000 Gu Masters to experiment, but as a righteous path person, a fairy of spirit affinity house, she has been indifferent. Her lover is the famous sword immortal Bo Qing. I think that within this love, there is probably more admiration for the strong. Bo Qing was known as the pseudo-venerable who split the 5 regions with his sword. Compared to him, Fang Yuan was just a mortal. In Mo Yao's heart, was he no different from a dead test subject? Thus, in this world, one has to rely on oneself. Only oneself is the most reliable. Fang Yuan sneered inwardly. He did not expose her, instead asking Mo Yao, "So, is the killer move 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King completed?" Mo Yao shook his head. "Not enough, the test subjects are only low-rank Gu Masters, we still need high-rank Gu Masters. Rank 5 Gu Masters are the best. If it is rank 5 Strength Path, that would be perfect." Rank 5 Strength Path. Fang Yuan frowned. As far as he knew, there were no other candidates besides him. Chapter 581. Fang Yuan entered the central control room once again. As the name implied, the central control room was the central area of 88-point Jinyang Tower. The secret room was circular, with walls shining with starlight, and a white jade round table at the center. There was an exquisite model on the table. It was similar to a sand table. It was the entire appearance of Imperial Court Blessed Land. Not only the mountains and rivers, but also the sacred palace at the center, even the small towers in the Blessed Land could be seen clearly. "I am here again." In his mind, Mo Yao's will sighed. Fang Yuan did not pay attention to her, he only looked at the white jade round table. Since entering 88-point Jinyang Tower, he had first used the guest token to reach high grade and enter the treasure room. He then refined the guest halt steal and found the glass owner token. Next, he used the glass owner token to enter the central control room. But because of Di Chou inheritance, he chose to temporarily stop attacking 88-point Jinyang Tower and refined Calamity Beckoning Immortal Gu. All in all, Di Chou inheritance had its pros and cons. Although Fang Yuan obtained the Immortal Gu, its effect was special, it benefited others at the expense of himself. Furthermore, Mo Yao's will had infiltrated his mind, he could not get rid of it and had many internal problems. But undeniably, Mo Yao's will had given Fang Yuan many pointers these days. He had gained a lot. Not just the refinement path insights, just the killer moves like 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King and Ink Transformation, as well as the modified Earth Chief Zombie Gu's recipe, were very valuable. Besides this, there was another huge benefit. That was, it was very useful for Fang Yuan's plans for 88-point Jinyang Tower. After all, Mo Yao was a refinement path grandmaster. He had deep research on 88-point Jinyang Tower. Back then, he had infiltrated Imperial Court Blessed Land and created a loophole, creating Di Chou inheritance, a legendary character. Fang Yuan had his previous life's memories. He also had the video of Central Continent Gu Immortals attacking 88-point Jinyang Tower. He also had the precious first-hand information from Land Spirit Langya, and now, he even had the help of Mo Yao. This time, he was very confident. But right after that, his gaze froze slightly, and he exclaimed in surprise. He clearly remembered that the sand table on the round table was covered in a layer of sticky black liquid. The black liquid formed a loophole vortex and slowly poured into a hole in the sand table. The hole was none other than the location of the Di Chou succession. But now, there was no trace of the ink on the sand table, and the spot that was covering Di Chou was completely restored, without a single hole. Such a scene was like a heavy blow to Fang Yuan's confidence. His heart skipped a beat. Just as he was about to make a guess, Mo Yao's will in his mind knew what he was thinking and chuckled. There are gains and losses. Little brother, you've already obtained the inheritance of Di Chou. With the power of the 88-point Jinyang Tower, the previous hole must have been restored. The hole on Di Chio is no longer there, and the small tower should have been rebuilt. Without the hole, how do I refine the glass owner token into an edge owner token? Fang Yuan asked. If there is no hole, you can create a new hole. Mo Yao smiled proudly. Why did I teach you the refinement path killer move ink transformation? You should have guessed it already. That's right, the ink you saw covering the sand table was caused by the killer move ink transformation. If there is no hole, create a hole. Mo Yao's words displayed the bearing of a refinement path grandmaster, causing Fang Yuan's brows to raise slightly. Even though it was easy to say, how to create a hole. Fang Yuan, who was at least a refinement path grandmaster, did not have this ability. Mo Yao continued, loopholes can't be casually made. Choosing randomly will only awaken the slumbering giant sun's will. Once the will wakes up, we will all die without a proper burial ground. Fortunately, the 88-point Xinyang Tower has been through the vicissitudes of time. It is no longer perfect. Time has carved out all sorts of flaws. Back then, I chose Di Chio because it had the biggest flaw. So that's it. Fang Yuan nodded, feeling happy in his heart. Mo Yao's will was like water without a source. If she wanted to find a flaw, she would need to think a lot. This was a huge drain on her. But Mo Yao did not follow Fang Yuan's wishes. She said, little brother, follow my instructions and use your mind to look into the sand table. I will tell you the mysteries of the 88-point Xinyang Tower's operations. This will help you find a flaw. Alright. Fang Yuan's gaze flickered. Mo Yao's actions were not out of his expectations. She cherished herself. It was fine if she did not think for herself. Fang Yuan used this chance to secretly learn from her and increase his understanding of the 88-point Xinyang Tower. The 88-point Xinyang Tower was extremely profound. Fang Yuan's mind entered the sand table. It was like a small boat in a vast ocean. It felt boundless and unfathomable. One corner or one side, they were both worth studying. At this moment, he felt insignificant and gasped in amazement. According to Mo Yao's instructions, Fang Yuan found a total of 54 flaws. 13 of them were bigger and formed a flaw, comparable to the one in Di Chio. This result made Mo Yao sigh. Time flies, so many years have passed. Even the 88 True Yang building could not escape the erosion of the river of time. Back then, I only found 38 flaws and only 6 flaws. After pausing for a while, she continued to instruct Fang Yuan, little brother, next, you can use the killer move ink transformation to refine these flaws. Fang Yuan followed her instructions. He willed and over 800 goo worms flew out of his aperture. These goo worms ranged from rank 1 to rank 5, they were related to metal, wood, water, earth, rule, soul, blood, and other paths, with dark path as the main path. Although these were mortal goo, over 10 of them had already gone extinct during the medieval antiquity era, while some could even be traced back to the remote antiquity era. Thus, they were extremely rare, completely extinct in the 5 regions now. Only a few goo immortals had collected them. Fang Yuan had spent a lot of money to gather these goo worms. He had spent at least 1.5 immortal yuan stone. Immortal yuan stone had extremely high value. It could directly replenish a goo immortal's immortal essence and help them cultivate. It was also the currency used by goo immortals for transactions. Even in Fang Yuan's previous life at his peak, he had only accumulated over 60 immortal yuan stone. Chapter 582. Kill. Damn it, another myriad beast king. In the huge desert, the hot air distorted one's vision. On the golden sea of sand, sandworms were emerging from the sand. As for the goo masters, they occupied a sand dune and defended it with difficulty. This was 88-point Xinyang Tower's 7th floor, the 89th round. Every checkpoint was a brand new world with all kinds of tests. A sandworm myriad beast king entered the battlefield, immediately causing the goo master's defensive line to fluctuate. Hold on for another 45 minutes and we will pass this round. Soul Blade General Pan Ping shouted loudly, boosting the morale. He was from the demonic path, and had now officially joined He tribe, becoming an external elder of He tribe. His personal battle strength was outstanding. But this round was a test of defense. It required the challengers to hold on to a specific sand dune for 12 hours. Facing the tide of sandworms, unless they were goo immortals, the strength of mortals was minuscule, thus the more people there were, the better. But Pan Ping's words did not have much effect. Up until now, the goo masters had suffered heavy casualties, they were exhausted and were about to reach their limits. Damn it, another myriad beast king appeared, how can we survive? Big Beard wiped the blood and sweat on his face, shouting strangely. His real name was unknown. Because of his thick beard, people called him Big Beard. In the previous round, he passed the 18th round of the 6th floor, thus making a name for himself. From being unknown to having a little bit of fame today. He was originally a rank 2 goo master, a small fry that could not be found in the sacred palace. But because of the reward for clearing the round, he advanced to rank 3 realm. When a goo master reached rank 3, it was not the same. Rank 2 were common, but rank 3 were rare, most of them were clan elders or elders. When Big Beard reached rank 3, his situation immediately improved. High-quality primeval essence raised his battle strength. His battle strength increased, along with the abundant battle spoils. Not only this, many middle-sized tribes extended olive branches to him. Small-sized tribes could not afford to raise an external elder, while large-sized tribes looked down on him. This is the 89th round, if we pass it, the reward will be incredible. It's impossible for people like us to get it. It is enough for me to exchange for 2 rank 3 goo. The bearded man thought, his heart burning. As he fought, he took the time to glance at the big shots at the top of the sand dune. They were the ones who issued the mission and gathered close to 1,000 goo masters to challenge this obstacle. The Sandworm Myriad Beast King charged into the defensive line. A fierce battle broke out immediately. Golden light, arrow rain, fire, all sorts of attacks rained down on the Myriad Beast King. The Myriad Beast King's carapace suddenly turned golden, its defense greatly increased, blocking all the attacks. It roared again and again, charging into the crowd and stirring up a bloody storm. Chang Biao stood on the sand dune and frowned. The situation is rather grim, he said. This Myriad Beast King actually has a rank 5 golden armor goo. If we let it continue to wreak havoc, the defensive line will be completely destroyed sooner or later. Up to this point, this was already the 9th Myriad Beast King. The battle strength of the Myriad Beast Kings also differed according to the wild goo parasitized on them. This Myriad Beast King was rather troublesome, because it had an outstanding defensive goo. Its group attack was not very effective. In such a situation, goo master experts would normally have to personally make a move to have an effect. As the saying goes, soldiers against soldiers, generals against generals. Chang Biao's unspoken meaning. And it was precisely because of this. Compared to Ma Hongyun, Chang Biao's background was much more noble, and he had large amounts of resources. But even so, Chang Biao reached rank 2 dozens of times faster than Ma Hongyun. This was because green copper relic goo grew naturally, and were extremely rare, and had different origins. It was also thanks to the 88-point Xinyang Tower that Ma Yingjie got as a reward for passing the round. This kid Ma Hongyun got rich by taking advantage of Chang Shanyin. Earlier, Chang Shanyin even ordered Chang and Gu tribe's goo masters to arrest many goo masters who took advantage of him. What if I report this to the authorities? Chang Biao pondered. No, just one Ma Hongyun, a mere rank 2, he is not even an ant in Chang Shanyin's eyes. His status is still too low, even if I report him, Ma Yingjie will not deal with Chang Shanyin for a mere Ma Hongyun. This matter, I need to continue planning and waiting. 45 minutes later, the cheers on the sand dune were deafening. Victory, victory! It was not easy, I finally passed this round. I wonder what the reward for this round is. Many curious gazes gathered on Chang Biao, Pan Ping, Ma Yingjie and the rest. After this round, many goo worms appeared in Chang Biao and the rest's apertures. One of the east window goo contained information. 6-arm heavenly zombie king. Chang Biao, Pan Ping, Ma Yingjie and the rest looked at each other after inspecting it. They had different expressions. Chapter 583. Boom! A figure dashed out like a bolt of lightning. His 6 arms pounded like heavy cannons and blew up an enormous helmeted crab. At once, in this secret room, blood splattered everywhere, broken limbs flew everywhere. Ha ha ha. Pan Ping's hair was disheveled, ignoring the blood and broken limbs on his body, he raised his head and laughed. Exhilarating, exhilarating. This 6-arm heavenly zombie king killer move is really powerful. Using the corpse, I can avoid the lack of strength path foundation. Thus, even if I only cultivate strength path slightly, I can still use it. Pan Ping's eyes shined brightly as he muttered to himself, savoring it. He was from the demonic path, he lacked resources and talent, thus, he had never grasped any killer moves. But even if he had not eaten pork, he had seen pigs run. After roaming in northern plains for so many years, Pan Ping's horizons had been broadened, he knew that this 6-arm heavenly zombie king killer move was as described in the records, it was extremely powerful. As long as I have it, my chances of winning against Wolf King will increase by 10%. Wolf King has a strength path killer move, now I have one too. Wolf King, don't be arrogant, one day, I will return the humiliation I suffered to you. Pan Ping gritted his teeth, his eyes filled with hatred. At the same time, Chang Biao was also testing this killer move. As expected of the reward from 88-point Xinyang Tower, this killer move is too powerful. The power of the killer move also shocked Chang Biao. If there is anything lacking, it would be that my appearance is slightly ugly. Chang Biao looked at the mirror in front of him with a deep gaze. The Chang Biao in the mirror had green-gray skin, fangs protruded from his mouth, his eyes were dim yellow, and his hair was a mess of red and green, it was very horrifying. Especially the 6 monstrous arms on his back. They were all different in thickness, each looking ferocious, causing people to feel a chill in their hearts. Pan Ping was from the demonic path, he usually lacked resources and lived a tough life. With survival as his goal, he did not care about this image. But Chang Biao was different. He came from Chang tribe, he was noble. He was a reputable person in the righteous path, he cherished his feathers and cared about his reputation. If he appeared in front of people with this appearance, he would feel uncomfortable. However, although he is ugly, this is the only way to deal with Chang Shanyin. Thinking of Fang Yuan, Chang Biao made up his mind. Speaking of which, this move is quite similar to his strength path killer move. His killer move was to grow 4 arms on his back together with his own arms. A total of 6 arms. My killer move is to grow 6 arms on my back, a total of 8 arms. This was the difference in appearance. In terms of power, my killer move is also more powerful. Chang Biao compared inwardly, his impression of Fang Yuan's killer move was still at the imperial court contest. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Chang Biao's mind, and a guess appeared in his mind, but it is also strange. The 2 killer moves were so similar. Maybe, this killer move of mine is the original version, while Chang Shanyin's killer move is an incomplete version that he obtained by chance. The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Chang Shanyin is already an enslavement master, with talent in enslavement path, how can he also have talent in strength path? When I kill him in the future, I wonder what expression Chang Shanyin will have when I use this killer move. I am really looking forward to it. Thinking of this, Chang Biao's lips curled into a small smile. Right at this time, a servant came to report. It said that Pan Ping was here. Chang Biao thought about it and roughly understood Pan Ping's intention, he ordered, bring him to my study room and serve him with good tea, I will be there in a while. The leader looked around, his gaze stopping on Ma Hongyun, he gave him a ruthless stare, he had already made up his mind, when we return, I will definitely kick this idiot out of the group. After this, I will definitely kick this idiot out of the group. So what if he is rank 2? Sigh, I was really blind back then. Seeing that his rank 2 goo worms are so exquisite and comprehensive, I agreed to let him join us. Goo masters are stupid to this extent, what use are the goo worms? Swoosh! Right at this time, there was a loud sound like a wave in the forest. Large numbers of iron-beak birds. They flapped their wings, flying from the branches into the sky. Seeing this, the goo masters felt like they had fallen into an ice cave. What's going on? Oh no, the birds are startled. Let's run. Ma Hongyun, it's all your fault. If I don't die this time, I will definitely settle the score with you. Everyone was anxious and fearful. Some were furious. No, the birds are flying towards the south, we did not startle them. It seems that there are others who accepted this mission from Chang tribe. The leader saw the situation and was overjoyed, he could not help but shout. Everyone turned to look at him. As expected, their mood immediately changed. Save us, save us. A group of goo masters quickly retreated, running towards them. Looking at the flock of birds that were attracted over, the goo masters' eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Don't come over. The leader shouted. If you come over, I will kill you first. Leader, look at their clothing, they should be Chang tribe members. Ma Hongyun said hesitantly. The leader stared, almost beating him up, he scolded, You idiot, do you still want to live? If not, go and save them. Ma Hongyun thought of the Earth Chief Beast Group earlier. He only wanted to warn Jiang Dong, but he was framed. If not for my luck. Ma Hongyun thought of this and shuddered, asking the leader. Then what do we do? The leader gritted his teeth, seeing that Chang tribe goo masters did not listen to his warning and were running towards them, he stomped his foot. What else can we do? Split up and run. Everyone dispersed in an uproar. Ma Hongyun was stunned. He quickly chose a direction and ran with all his might. Lord, that is Ma Hongyun, Ma Yingjia's trusted aide. The escaping Chang tribe goo masters looked flustered, but they were actually calm and fearless. Chang tribe's leader was Chang Diao's trusted aide, he looked at Ma Hongyun's back and was stunned. Is this person an idiot? He has a movement goo and isn't using it. Chang tribe wanted to scheme, they naturally had information on Ma Hongyun, they knew that his goo worms were all rank 2 and were of excellent quality. They are going to catch up. Damn it, why are they running so fast? It is because they used a movement goo. Ah! Right, I have a movement goo. While running, Ma Hongyun patted his forehead, quickly activating his goo worm and increasing his speed. I finally remembered. Why is he running towards the left? The leader was stunned again. He did not know that Ma Hongyun had no sense of direction, his sense of direction was extremely poor. Earlier, during Fei tribe's coup, his father sacrificed himself to let him escape. In the end, he took a big detour and turned back. Ma Hongyun's escape caused the situation to become grim. The leader quickly commanded, You, quickly follow Ma Hongyun and protect him. Also, tell Lady Changli to go ahead and prepare. Yes, Lord. Even though Chang tribe's goo masters were elites, Ma Hongyun ran around randomly and often fell into dangerous situations. Chang tribe's goo masters attracted the birds while protecting him in the dark without being seen through, it was extremely difficult. The plan that was supposed to succeed had instead sacrificed many experts. Save me. Changli lay on the ground, weak, looking pitiful. She tore her clothes, revealing her snow-white shoulders and disheveled hair, looking delicate and pitiful like a frightened rabbit. Ma Hongyun ran over, only looking ahead and running for his life, he did not notice Changli. Changli was dazed, but she had an idea in the midst of the crisis, tripping Ma Hongyun when he was about to run over. Plop! Ma Hongyun fell flat on his face, turning around to look, he was stunned. What a beautiful girl! He was usually simple-minded, but he was also at the age of a young man. Gongzi, please save me, Changli said. Changli's voice made Ma Hongyun's heart itch. As expected of a young hero. Chang Biao looked at Ma Hongyun and praised him. After a pause, he continued, since ancient times, heroes love beauties, and beauties are paired with heroes. I won't hide it from everyone. Ever since my daughter was saved, she has been very quiet and unwilling to leave. I asked for the reason and found out that my daughter's heart belongs to someone else. She is worried about that heroic young man who saved her in danger. I held this banquet to express my gratitude and also because of this reason. Once he said this, the hall was in an uproar. Countless gazes were filled with envy, jealousy, shock, and disbelief as they looked at Ma Hongyun. What kind of dog shit luck does this kid have? To be able to gain the favor of Chang family's young miss? Chang Li is pretty and lovely, who would have thought that she would fall in love with such a silly kid? Sigh, if I had known, I would have gone to the forest where the iron-beaked birds live. Although this Chang Li is not Chang Biao's biological daughter, she was adopted since young and has always been loved by Chang Biao. She is the apple of elder Chang Biao's eye. If Ma Hongyun marries Chang Li, his father-in-law will be Chang Biao. At once, everyone's emotions were boiling. Ma Yingjie quickly recovered from his shock. He quickly thought and still had doubts. Could this be the reason why Chang Biao invited us to a banquet? Although there is the matter of Su Xian's night elopement, isn't this too good? Even better things were yet to come. In front of everyone, Chang Biao took out 2 white silver relic gu. The new generation excels the old. Nephew is a young hero of our northern plains, I have to reward you. These 2 white silver relic gu are my thanks for saving my life, nephew, please accept them. The commotion in the hall became even louder. Ah! Ma Hongyun looked at Ma Yingjie in a hurry. Ma Yingjie nodded and smiled. I don't dare to refuse an elder's gift, Hongyun, why aren't you kneeling and thanking him? Ma Hongyun quickly left his seat and walked forward, kneeling, thank you Lord Chang Biao for the gift. Chang Biao laughed heartily and also left his seat, personally handing the 2 white silver relic gu to Ma Hongyun. Under everyone's gaze, he intimately patted Ma Hongyun's hand and asked, I wonder what nephew's opinion of my daughter. Ah! Ma Hongyun raised his head with a flushed face, not knowing how to reply. After pondering for a while, he finally squeezed out a few words, Lady Chang Li is beautiful, very beautiful. Ha ha ha. Chang Biao raised his head and laughed, that's good, that's good. Nephew, please return to your seat. They returned to their seats and continued with the banquet. The banquet lasted from evening until late at night before the host and guests left after enjoying themselves. As the crowd dispersed, the matter of Chang tribe marrying off their daughter and the lucky lad Ma Hongyun spread far and wide. On the second day, Chang Biao invited Ma Yingjie and Ma Hongyun to a banquet again. But this time, the scale was smaller and not as big as before, only a few people were invited. Ma Yingjie looked at the invitation card in his hand, his gaze solemn. After returning, he did not sleep for the whole night, pondering over this matter. The small invitation made him feel exceptionally heavy in his hands. He placed the invitation card on the table and called for a servant, go, summon Ma Hongyun to have an audience. The servant quickly received the order and when he arrived at Ma Hongyun's residence, Zhao Lianyan was instructing Ma Hongyun face to face, you idiot, what kind of dog shit did you step on to actually have such luck? But this matter is too good, it makes people feel guilty instead. I think, tribe leader Ma Yingjie will definitely summon you to inquire about this matter. At that time, you just need to tell him everything clearly, you cannot hide anything. Oh. Ma Hongyun immediately agreed. Also. Zhao Lianyan's eyeballs turned, didn't Chang Biao reward you with 2 white silver relic gu? When the tribe leader summons you, offer these 2 gu to him. What? Ma Hongyun's eyes opened wide, shouting, I risked my life to obtain these with great difficulty. Lord Chang Biao rewarded me with gu worms, if I use them, I can immediately advance to rank 2 upper stage. This is such a good thing. You idiot. Zhao Lianyan angrily kicked Ma Hongyun's calf. Ma Hongyun immediately hugged his calf, crying out in pain, why did you kick me again? Zhao Lianyan rolled his eyes, unhappily reprimanding, "What do you know? Even if you advance to rank 2 upper stage, with your skills, what use is it? What is the foundation of our existence?" It was not because of his cultivation at the second transition, but because of his friendship with leader Ming Jie. "How did you advance to rank 2? It is the 3 green bronze relic goo that tribe leader Ming Jie rewarded you. You offered the white silver relic shares, that is showing your loyalty. Do you think the tribe leader will embezzle your 2 white silver relic goo? Humph, he has no use for them, he will definitely accept them and return them to you." Since he accepted the goo worms, why would he return them to me? Ma Hongyun asked in puzzlement. "Idiot." Zhao Lianyan rolled his eyes again. "Ma tribe is declining now, there are few tribesmen and many things are waiting to be done. In the whole tribe, there is only one rank 3 old Ma Yuliang, and he is crippled. Ma Yingjie has just ascended to the position and does not have anyone he can use. He also wants to revitalize the tribe. It is time to promote talents and nurture trusted aides. Although your surname was Fei, your surname is Ma now, and you were once Ma Yingjie's head servant. Ma Yingjie knows you very well, he is more assured in using you than others. If you offer your goo worms and express your loyalty, he will definitely be happy and accept your goo worms. This is acknowledging your loyalty. But Ma Yingjie is not a petty and stingy mediocre lord. Accepting the goo worms is just a gesture, he will definitely return them to you. Why? It is to set an example, to encourage the tribesmen to learn from your loyalty. I am certain that he will not only return the white silver relic goo to you, he will even reward you. Although you lack ability, you have loyalty. This is called buying a horse's bones with 1,000 gold coins." Ma Hongyun was confused. What is buying a horse's bones with 1,000 gold coins? "Sigh, you won't understand even if I explain. Just do as I say. There will definitely be benefits for you." "Oh." Ma Hongyun scratched his head and agreed. The two had just come to an agreement when Ma Yingjie's servant ran over to send a message. Ma Hongyun followed his words and offered 2 white silver relic goo. But different from Zhao Lianyan's estimation, after Ma Yingjie accepted them, he did not return them to Ma Hongyun. This caused Ma Hongyun to complain to Zhao Lianyan when he returned. Ma Yingjie wanted to develop his tribe, he also wanted to rely on Chang tribe and He tribe's help. The 3 tried to curry favor and immediately changed the way they addressed each other, calling each other brothers. The 3 chatted in the study until late at night. They were very happy. When it was almost midnight, the 3 separated after deciding on Ma Hongyun and Chang Li's marriage. Brother Chang's plan is brilliant. With this marriage, Ma Yingjie will be tied together with Brother Chang. In the future, when we deal with that wolf king, would Ma Yingjie not be afraid? Closing the door, Pan Ping laughed. But Chang Biao shook his head. Ma Yingjie is not easy to fool, he knows when to yield and when to stand tall. In times of danger, he will definitely have the determination to cut his losses. Now is not the time to recruit him, but as long as we are on good terms with him, and let the world know of our close relationship, we can increase our resources and support that Ma Hongyun to increase our control over Ma tribe. In the future, when we declare war with Chang Shanin, as long as the enraged Chang Shanin sees Ma tribe as an enemy, Ma Yingjie will not be able to get off our ship to protect the tribe. Imperial Court Blessed Land's night was filled with silver light, it was bright and warm. Inside the carriage, Ma Yingjie and Ma Hongyun sat opposite each other. "Hongyun, you are really lucky, you actually obtained Lady Chang Li's favor. He, I have already decided with Lord Chang Biao, the first day of next month will be your and Chang Li's wedding day." Ma Yingjie smiled. Ah! This news was out of Ma Hongyun's expectations, he could not react in time. "I can see your loyalty, very good, this is your reward." Ma Yingjie sighed, patting Ma Hongyun's shoulder and summoning 3 red steel relic goo from his aperture. This! Ma Hongyun was flabbergasted, he blankly received these 3 red steel relic goo. Marrying Lady Changli, without strength and status, wouldn't that weaken our Ma tribe's reputation? Take these 3 red steel relic goo and use them to advance to rank 2 peak stage. With your aptitude, advancing to rank 3 is not a problem. I will now appoint you as the acting elder. You will be in charge of the tribe's miscellaneous affairs. Ma Yingjie announced. Ah! Ma Hongyun's eyes were wide open, staring blankly at the Ma tribe leader in front of him. To him, this surprise was too big and too sudden. Ma Yingjie purposely had a dark expression. Why aren't you kneeling down and thanking me? Ma Hongyun's mind was a mess, but his body subconsciously kneeled on the ground. Thank you, Lord, for promoting me. Do well. Ma Yingjie encouraged him, but his thoughts drifted far away. 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King's killer move seems to have astonishing power. Since it can obtain Pan and Chong Li's attention, and it doesn't require too much strength path cultivation, why don't I give it a try? 88-point Jinyang Tower, Central Control Room. Ink Transformation. Fong Yuan's eyes shone with a bright light as he shouted and pressed his hands down. Immediately, all kinds of goo worms fell down like rain, quickly fusing with each other as they fell. When they landed on the sand table, they had already turned into drops of ink. The ink quickly accumulated and covered the entire surface of the sand table again. Next, it found a flaw and formed a whirlpool, gathering towards it. In Fong Yuan's mind, Mo Yao's will saw this and evaluated in satisfaction. Very good, you are already familiar with the refinement path method I taught you, burst rain. Using this method, you can speed up the goo refinement process by at least 30%, and even raise the effect by 20%. I have nothing left to teach you about this method. You only need to remember, the essence of burst rain lies in the word burst. But you cannot just focus on speed, the entire process requires your full concentration. Thus, you cannot use this method too frequently. If you use it too much, you might become dazed and dizzy, causing the goo refinement to fail. If you use it too much, your soul will be injured and you will lose your memories, becoming demented. Goo refinement was dangerous, it was not much safer than fighting. Fong Yuan already knew this. He listened to Mo Yao's guidance while methodically throwing the owner token into the ink whirlpool. A moment later, the ink was used up, and the owner token slowly flew up, landing in Fong Yuan's hand. Fong Yuan looked at the owner token. It already had 5 edges. This meant the ink transformation had already been carried out 5 times. It was strange. Fong Yuan's immortal Yuan stone was scarce, he could only carry out 1 more ink transformation. Why did he use it 3 more times? It turned out that ever since Fong Yuan obtained the 1-edge owner token, his authority had been raised. He could use the 1-edge owner token to obtain the rewards of any floor in 88-point Jinyang Tower. After Fong Yuan learned about it, he did not hesitate and immediately chose a floor. This floor was the 7th floor. 1-edge owner token could allow a goo master to control a floor in 88-point Jinyang Tower. The goo masters had already worked together to get to the 89th round in the 7th floor. Why did Fong Yuan choose this floor out of all the others? Because the reward for this 89th round was 5 immortal Yuan stone. Fong Yuan sneaked in and used the owner token to control this floor. Chang Biao, Pan Ping, Ma Yingjie and the rest passed this round and were taken over by Fong Yuan. He secretly kept 5 immortal Yuan stones and sent the reduced version of 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King into their apertures as a reward. The original 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King used Borrow Strength Goo as the core, 6 Flying Zombie Goo as the pillars, and other goo worms as support. After being modified by Fong Yuan and Mo Yao's wills, the killer move handed to them had Overlord Goo replaced as the core, greatly reducing its power. Although the Flying Zombie Goo were complete, the Earth Chief Zombie Goo was an old version goo worm and not Mo Yao's modified goo recipe. Most importantly, the other support goo worms were also modified, adding in Will Goo and others to secretly collect the experience of Chang Biao, Pan Ping and the rest. This way, not only would the other party not suspect that the rewards were secretly tampered with, they could also test the killer move for Fong Yuan and find out the inadequacies. Looking at the time, it has already been half a month since the killer move rewards were distributed. It is time to reel in the fish. What do you think? Fang Yuan asked Mo Yao's will in his mind with a negotiating tone. Mo Yao muttered, "It is not a long time, we can take 2 sets and see the results." Fang Yuan held the pentagonal owner token and with a shift of his mind, he found 2 familiar figures in the 90th round of the 7th floor. Pan Ping and Chang forcefully calmed down, attempting to break out of the wolf group's encirclement. But Fang Yuan was in control of this round, the so-called maze was clear in his heart, he knew every corner. He could easily mobilize the wolf group, no matter how Pan Ping and Chang charged, there would always be wolf groups chasing and obstructing them. "No, I cannot die here. Damned wolf brat, watch my killer move." Pan Ping's primeval essence was almost exhausted, he had no choice but to activate the killer move, 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King. He turned into an 8-arm zombie, his battle strength rose sharply and everywhere he went, he set off huge waves, the wolves suffered heavy losses and were unable to resist. Chang Biao used his primeval essence and followed behind Pan Ping, saving a lot of energy. Good times did not last long, Pan Ping's primeval essence was soon completely exhausted. Chang Biao quickly saved him. At this critical moment, we can only work together to have a chance of escaping. Rest, use Yuan stones to recover your primeval essence, I will protect you. Chang Biao also used 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King's killer move, firmly protecting Pan Ping. Like this, the two helped each other and stabilized the situation. Like this, 7 to 8 days passed, Chang Biao and Pan Ping's primeval essence was completely exhausted, they could not hold on any longer. "Am I going to die here?" Pan Ping roared towards the sky. "Damn it, there must be a way out, there must be a way out." Chang Biao lost his usual demeanor, shouting loudly. Just when the two were in despair, they suddenly saw a large pile of Yuan stones at the corner ahead. Yuan stone. Yuan stone like a small hill, so many, I didn't see wrongly, right? The two were overjoyed at having found life in this desperate situation, they quickly gathered their remaining courage and rushed over, using Yuan stone to absorb their primeval essence and stabilized the situation. I get it, this round is testing the Gu Master's endurance. Chang Biao shouted in joy. So that's it. Pan Ping heard this and realized. The two were overjoyed, but did not notice the abnormality in their bodies. As they activated 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King more and more times, unrecoverable livor mortis appeared on their bodies. This Yuan stone hill is enough for us to hold on for another 2 to 3 months. Pan Ping threw himself on the Yuan stone hill, crying tears of joy. Hurry up and recover your primeval essence. We cannot just sit here and do nothing, there should be other Yuan stone hills. When we are thirsty, we drink wolf blood, when we are hungry, we eat wolf meat. If we persevere like this, we might be able to pass this round. Chang Biao's eyes shone with brilliance. Brother Chang, you are right. Pan Ping suddenly sat up, Chang Biao's description made his face flush with happiness. This round is so difficult, there is a slim chance of survival. I wonder what kind of generous rewards there will be for passing this round. Chang Biao resisted the wolf group's attacks. He heaved a long sigh and said, I finally know why this round can only be entered and not exited. If we can easily retreat, how can this round test the Gu masters who are trying to pass it? The pitiful two still did not know that this Yuan stone hill was intentionally left here by their great enemy, Fang Yuan. His goal was to continue experimenting and make them use their killer moves more times. The situation was all within Fang Yuan's grasp. Even if the two did not want to use their killer moves. If they used their original methods, Fang Yuan could still manipulate the wolf group to charge and create a dangerous situation. Thus, the two had no choice but to use their killer moves. Fang Yuan's worries were unnecessary. The more the two used their killer moves, the more smoothly they used them, and subconsciously, they started to rely on it. In the following battles, they rarely used their original methods. When the livor mortis on their bodies thickened, it was already the time when their bodies were in grave danger. Only then did the two realize. Right now, it was already too late. I am not resigned, I am not resigned, I am actually going to die here. Wolf King, I will not let you off even as a ghost. Pan Ping Xian died. Before dying, he cursed Fang Yuan. A few days later, Chang Biao also died from exhaustion in the intense battle. He died with everlasting regret and on the verge of death. When he was on the verge of death, he muttered, "Exit, where is the exit?" He had too many things on his mind. Too many things that he could not put down. The wolf-killing alliance was still in its infancy, and the plan to kidnap Ming Jie had just begun. What he was most worried about was his own son, Chang Jiyu. Actually, Chang Biao was also a pitiful person. For his reputation, he did not dare to acknowledge this son of his from start to finish. He could only hear Chang Jiyu calling him, "Godfather, Godfather." Even so, he felt it was not safe. To conceal it, he even adopted a few orphans as his adopted sons and daughters. One of them was Chang Li. He had painstakingly hidden his entire life, planning so much, but he could not see anything at the moment of his death. He was not resigned, he was remorseful, he was vexed, but what could he do? I really want to hear him call me father. This strong thought before his death finally transformed into a bellyful of grief, indignation, and regret. Along with the extinguishing of the candle of his life, he passed away unwillingly. Activating the killer move for the 2311th time, although he died from exhaustion, the corpse energy accumulated in his body was the main cause of his death. Fang Yuan flashed and appeared beside Chang Biao's corpse. He smiled lightly, the experiment had achieved the desired goal, and he found a problem. Even if the killer move could not be used for more than the time limit, using it too frequently would cause the body to have livor mortis, and if it accumulated too much, the Gu Master would die. Be it Pan Ping or Chang Biao's death, it was because of this problem. Fang Yuan stored the Gu worms on the two people's bodies. This round was under his control. Even if Pan Ping and Chang Biao wanted to detonate their Gu worms, it was impossible. Chang Biao had a set of wind path Gu worms, they were of excellent quality. Pan Ping's Gu worms were also extraordinary, but with Fang Yuan's current knowledge and capital, it was better than nothing. Only Pan Ping's soul blade Gu had some collectible value, and Fang Yuan took a few more glances at it. A few days later. In the study room, Fang Yuan held an east window Gu, meditating with his eyes closed. Hostility Gu can condense hostile intent. Hostility Gu has strong and fierce attacks, invading like fire, but lacks flexibility and does not have the ability to sustain. Determination Gu can condense determination. Determination Gu is sharp and unstoppable, like a blade or a spear, but it is hard to recover and replenish. Unrestrained Will Gu can condense unrestrained intent. Unrestrained intent has no restraints, it is the most powerful, but it is hard to control, easily harming others and oneself. This East Window Gu contained a relatively complete wisdom path inheritance. Fang Yuan had bought it from Jewel Yellow Skies, paying the little remaining immortal Yuan stone he had. But it was worth it. Fang Yuan had benefited greatly after reading it. Fang Yuan pondered, in this inheritance, there are 14 wisdom path Gu worms, among which, there are 6 that involve wills. They are, Hostility Gu, Determination Gu, Unrestrained Will Gu, Change Will Gu, Cold Will Gu, and Chaos Will Gu. The first 3 are used to condense wills, and each have their own advantages and disadvantages. Wisdom Path was the most mysterious Gu Master path. It was broad and profound, originating from star constellation Immortal Venerable. It existed since the immemorial antiquity era. Although the number of people who cultivated it was extremely few, it was still passed down to this day, never declining and lasting for 10,000 years. Then, is Imo Yao's will hostile, determination, or unrestrained? The reason why Fang Yuan researched these was to guard against and deal with this huge threat in his mind. Her hostility is ferocious like fire, her determination is sharp like a spear, and it's unbridled and uncontrollable. But Imo Yao's will is mysterious like the ocean, hidden and ethereal. When I fought her earlier, I only felt that it was difficult to exert my strength, as if I raised my fist and punched onto cotton. Fong Yuan analyzed and felt that Imo Yao's will did not belong to any of them. This inheritance he had collected was only a corner of wisdom path. There were definitely large numbers of other wisdom path goo worms. It seems, I need to continue collecting information on wisdom path. Fong Yuan sighed to himself. Mo Yao's will was not easy to deal with because Fong Yuan was not familiar with wisdom path, he did not know her details and could not use his methods. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. I will endure it for now. On one hand, I will let her think and weaken herself, on the other hand, I will use her to explore True Yang building. Just as he was thinking, the vague figure of Mo Yao's will appeared in Fong Yuan's mind. It's done, this time, 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King is truly perfected, there are no more flaws. Mo Yao said, her tone was weak and her expression was tired. Chapter 587. Fong Yuan was a vigilant person, he had always thought that no one in the world could be relied on, the only one he could truly rely on was himself. Thus, when he obtained the killer move 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King, he started to research it. This killer move was originally modified from his foundation. Moreover, these days, under Mo Yao's guidance, Fong Yuan's refinement path attainment had deepened and his horizons had changed. Therefore, he understood the 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King like the back of his hand, clearly and thoroughly. Right now, when he saw this perfected killer move, he did not need to experiment to know that this move was extremely perfected. Mo Yao had removed many supplementary goo worms from the original foundation, the core and 6-pillar goo worms were not changed, but he added several supplementary goo worms. Fong Yuan exclaimed in admiration as he sensed the ingenuity in it. In his mind, Mo Yao's will explained, this is all thanks to the Wilgu in Pan and Chong, with their experience and knowledge, I was able to modify it to this extent. This killer move is already perfected to the extreme, as long as it does not exceed 30 minutes, no matter how many times it is used, it will not accumulate corpse energy in the body and cause livor mortis. Fong Yuan nodded, knowing that Mo Yao was speaking the truth. This killer move was indeed perfected to the extreme, according to this train of thought, it was already the best. Unless immortal goo were added in the future, or the core goo worms were changed. But if immortal goo were added, the original system would be broken and would need to be reconstructed. It would be completely different, like the saying, pull one hair and the whole body will be affected. If the core goo worms were changed, it would be like changing the entire train of thought. Changing the train of thought. The entire killer move would be completely different. After reconstruction. Rather than calling it 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King, it would be more accurate to call it a new killer move. All in all, this killer move 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King, be it the core goo, the pillar goo, or the supplementary goo worms, they were all perfected to the extreme. There was no longer anything that could be modified. Even though there were still repercussions, after 30 minutes, the corpse energy would cause damage to the goo master's body. If the time was exceeded, the goo master might even turn into a zombie. But this was caused by the goo master's improper use, it could be avoided. Because no matter how many times it was used, it would not accumulate livor mortis. Goo masters could activate it frequently and obtain the effect of activating the killer move for a long time. However, Fong Yuan was not satisfied with such a great achievement. He was still somewhat dissatisfied. If you have any other ideas to perfect the killer move, I'm all ears. Mo Yao sneered. Reaching this step, the 6-armed Heavenly Zombie King is already the limit, there is no room for improvement. But there is one thing that I am not satisfied with, that is the after effects of this killer move. Fong Yuan said. It has been perfected. The current 6-arm Heavenly Zombie King's power had doubled again, and it could last for as long as an incense stick's time. It is enough for you to deal with all the challenges in the mortal world. What else are you dissatisfied with? You have to know, any killer move is a combination of goo worms, it is the use of goo worms. There must be some drawbacks. The after effects of killer moves were unavoidable, but they were severe. Some were weak. Such a strength path killer move is among the top 5 in my memory. Brat, don't be greedy. Mo Yao lectured. Fang Yuan snorted coldly. His imaginary enemies were Gu immortals, existences that had transcended the mortal world. With 6-arm heavenly zombie king, even if Fang Yuan gave up enslavement path, he could move unhindered in the mortal world. But against Gu immortals, it was far from enough. Fighting an immortal as a mortal, this goal was too arrogant, it was too sensational. Fang Yuan felt disdain, and it was not convenient for him to tell Mo Yao. Immediately, he continued, preparedness leads to success, unpreparedness leads to failure. What if one day, due to special circumstances, I use the killer move too much and turn into a zombie? I am also clear that the killer move 6-arm heavenly zombie king cannot be improved anymore. Next, I need to get rid of this after effect. Mo Yao understood Fang Yuan's meaning. She fell into silence. Fang Yuan was young and successful, Mo Yao did not expect him to have such a cautious side. In truth, this made Mo Yao look at Fang Yuan in a different light. This lad has talent, resources, fortuitous encounters, he has perseverance and knows when to yield or when to stand tall. On one hand, he strives forward bravely, on the other hand, he is steady and cautious, taking everything into consideration. Sooner or later, this lad's name will shake the world. The silence was short. Soon, Mo Yao said, to get rid of this after effect, it is somewhat troublesome. 6-arm heavenly zombie king is not an ordinary zombie. The zombie energy is extremely dense. Once a Gu master transforms, they cannot even use yin-yang rotation Gu. You are a grand refinement grandmaster, even you have no way. Fang Yuan did not believe it. Mo Yao was not affected by Fang Yuan's provocation, her tone was still calm. I need a rank 5 Gu master to completely transform into 6-arm heavenly zombie king, and then experiment on their body. I need this experimenter's full cooperation, I need to grasp their state at all times, physical aspect, mental state, perception, these are all important information for reference. Mo Yao did not want to think too deeply and exhaust herself. She used the same trick again, using a living person as an experiment to replace the process of her deep thinking and difficult deductions. Fang Yuan frowned, rank 5 Gu master. And they need to cooperate fully? That's right, it is best if they are willing. Because when I use slavery Gu and so on to control them, it will interfere with the proper expression of their emotions, and also destroy the experience and feeling of transforming into a zombie. This was difficult. If Fang Yuan wanted to resolve the problem of 6-arm heavenly zombie kings after effect, he would need to find a rank 5 Gu master, and he or she would need to be willing to listen to Fang Yuan's words, and take the risk of dying to fully cooperate with the experiment. Where could Fang Yuan find such a person? 3 days later. Central Control Room. From the ink whirlpool, the owner token rose up and slowly flew into Fang Yuan's hands. Activating the refinement path killer move ink transformation once again, the pentagonal owner token turned into a hexagon. Fang Yuan was half happy and half worried. He was happy because he now had a hexagon owner token. Once He Lolan's owner token reached 4 corners, he would be able to snatch it and refine it into a 10-edge owner token. With the 10-edge owner token, he would be able to inherit a true inheritance of Giant Sun Immortal. An immortal venerable's true inheritance was a huge temptation to anyone. He was worried because for this 6th ink transformation, Fang Yuan had really emptied his savings. To raise funds, he sold the immortal Gu remnant recipes again, causing these remnant recipes to lose their value. At the same time, he sold large numbers of rock men, fox groups, wolf groups, Gu worms, and even precious hairy men, as well as a few air bubble fish. For example, the rank 4 emotion poem Gu, golden dragon Gu, golden wind Gu, several rank 5 spring egg Gu, Vidra angry gaze Gu, touch gold Gu, loose bones Gu, crow 7 Gu, and clues Gu were all sold. Right now, I only have the enslavement and strength path Gu worms in my aperture. In Hu immortal blessed land, there is one of Blood Sea ancestors' true inheritances, rank 4 blood skull Gu. Rank 3 bone flesh unity Gu, as well as Inyang rotation goo which has already used up its Yin goo. There are also some Stargate goo, Whole Earth goo, Connecting Heaven goo, Divine Sense goo, Burial Soul Toad and other supplementary goo worms. Some of these goo worms were extremely important and could not be sold easily. Some were absolutely necessary and needed to be used. Who immortal blessed land has almost been squeezed dry by me, I need to recuperate for a period of time. But I have the 6-edge owner token, I can control any 6 floors of 88-point Jinyang Tower. I can take away the rewards from each of the 6 levels at will. This amount of wealth is extremely abundant, if I take it all, my wealth will increase by over 60 times. Fong Yuan had his own plans. But now, he could not touch these riches. He Lulan had gathered a large number of experts and was already at the final round of the 5th floor. Not long in the future, he would have a 1-edge owner token. With this token, he could check the rewards of any floor in 88-point Jinyang Tower. If Fong Yuan took away the rewards, wouldn't he be exposed? At the final stage, when Imperial Court Blessed Land is about to close and everyone is sent out, I will take away the rewards. At that time, no one will know. Boom! The bear paw slammed heavily, the ground shook and rocks flew everywhere like cannonballs. As the dust settled, 5 to 6 horsecart-sized bear paws slowly rose up, leaving behind a huge crater on the ground. The rank 4 goo master who was unlucky enough to be hit by the bear paw turned into a pile of red meat paste, mixed with bone fragments and brain matter. It is too fast. No one could react in time. The final round is truly harder than ascending to heaven. This is only a flying bear phantom, it only has half the strength of the real body. If it was a real desolate beast flying bear, we would not even be able to escape. The goo masters on the battlefield were all injured, they were in a sorry state and had lingering fear. The one guarding the 100th round of the 5th floor was the phantom of a desolate beast flying bear. It was huge, like a small mountain. Its body was covered in white fur, white as snow. It had all sorts of excellent wild goo on its body. Its attacks were fierce, but its movements were light and quick like lightning, it did not match its fat body. The battle had not even lasted 30 minutes, but the goo masters had already suffered disastrous losses. Lord Tribe Leader, let's retreat. This time, we were mainly probing it, we have already investigated the goo worms on the flying bear, we have already achieved our goal. Our goal has already been achieved. Sun Shirhan stood beside He Lulan, advising. He Lulan frowned, looking around the battlefield. I sent people to inform them, but found that the 7th floor's checkpoint has a complicated terrain, it is a huge maze. Letter goo are forbidden in the maze, and there are wild wolf groups roaming in the depths. Our subordinates searched for many days, but only found some traces of battle, and did not find Lord Pan and Chang. He Lulan snorted coldly, waving his hand, forget it, let's not wait for them, the guest token has been prepared, we will set off tomorrow morning. On the 2nd day, everyone majestically charged into the 5th floor. This was the largest scale of goo masters working together since the opening of 88-point Jinyang Tower, it attracted the gazes of countless people in the sacred palace. The 5th floor's final checkpoint was a barren mountain range. The brown mountain soil was as hard as iron and stone, there was no vegetation. The moment everyone arrived, the flying bear phantom sensed them, it raised its head and roared, exploding the air and echoing like thunder. Swoosh! But in the dusky yellow sky, a white whirlwind swept past, pressing down. The experts scattered in all directions. The flying bear phantom heavily smashed on the ground, with a loud sound, the earth shook and the mountains shook. Intense winds blew, causing many people to be unable to stand still. It is truly ferocious. Pei Yen Fei's expression was solemn, if he had taken it head-on, he would have lost a layer of skin even if he did not die. It is all thanks to tribe leader He Lulan's reminder, otherwise, we would have been ambushed by this bear the moment we entered. Gu Guolong said with lingering fear as he looked at the huge pit, at the reckless roar of the flying bear. This is called learning from experience, the last time we entered, we were ambushed by the flying bear, 5 experts died on the spot. He Xiaoyi gritted his teeth, replying hatefully. Brother Shanin, it's up to you. He Lulan urged. According to the battle plan, the first wave of attacks would be launched by the enslavement path Gu Masters, to exhaust the flying bear phantom's battle strength. Needless to say, large groups of wolves charged towards the flying bear phantom from all directions, from the sky to the ground. In the sky, there was the Azure Wolf group. On the ground, there were White Eyes Wolves, Frenzy Wolves, Blood Forest Wolves and so on. Fong Yuan had brought 400,000 ordinary wolves with him. At once, the wolf group covered the sky, like a huge wave in the sea, they flooded towards the island like flying bear phantom. Howl! The flying bear's roar shook heaven and earth. Howl! The wolf group howled, not willing to show weakness. An intense battle erupted, creating a rain of blood. The flying bear phantom's 4 paws slammed, each attack killing dozens of wolves. The wolves could only cause harassment, only the mutated wolf group could slightly injure the flying bear phantom. And the goo worms on the goo masters were basically all refined. This was the reason why He Lulan ordered people to investigate the location of the wild goo worms. As long as they could capture the wild goo on the flying bear, it would be much easier to destroy the flying bear phantom. Even if they could not capture it, they could just destroy it. Goo worms were very fragile, like the rank 6 spring-autumn cicada, Fong Yuan only needed to pinch it lightly to kill it. Wild beasts did not have apertures, wild goo lived on their bodies, this was a huge weakness. He Lulan snorted, shouting, "Continue investigating." He was not satisfied with this result, the Star River goo was residing in the flying bear's mouth, it was too difficult to capture it. While they were talking, the situation became even worse. Tang Miaoming and He Qisheng are unable to hold on. Pei Yan Fei's expression was grim. Chapter 589. Wild goo could directly absorb the primeval energy in the air and could be activated at will without any worry of primeval essence depletion. But in an intense battle, the more it progressed, the fewer times the wild goo would be able to activate. When the battle situation turned bad, these wild goo would rely on their instinctive reaction to danger to leave their host and escape on the spot. Thus, when attacking ferocious beasts, especially beast kings or desolate beasts, their firepower would usually be fierce in the early stages of the battle. After the battle continued for some time, their attacks would gradually lose their ferocity. Even so, we cannot let the Fox Group and Eagle Group suffer losses like this. Lord Chang Shanin, please make a move. He Xiaoyi said from the side. Make a move, make a move. Fong Yuan crossed his arms, standing proudly at one side and sneered, according to the previous battle plan, I will make a move first, then the 2 of them will take over. This will repeat over and over again, with each round lasting 15 minutes. But right now, they have not even lasted 15 minutes, it is not my turn to make a move. If they went on stage now, the wolf group would only suffer the cruel slaughter of the flying bear phantom. Although they would achieve the goal of exhausting the flying bear's battle strength, if they could reduce their losses, Fong Yuan would be happy to do so. As for how severe the other people's losses were, what did that have to do with Fong Yuan? He Xiaoyi was furious, but due to Fong Yuan's status, he could only suppress his anger. Wolf Wangda's people, everyone has to give it their all in this battle. Right now, Tang Miaoming and He Qisheng are fighting a bloody battle, but Lord is just watching from the sidelines. Isn't this too much? You dare to lecture me? Fong Yuan raised his brows, his killing intent surging. He crossed his arms. But a monstrous arm suddenly shot out from his back. The monstrous arm was heavy and powerful, but moved like lightning, smashing towards He Xiaoyi. He Xiaoyi had never thought that Fong Yuan would dare to do this in public. He dared to try to kill him in such a crucial battle. Before the fist even reached him, he felt a strong gust of wind blowing towards him, causing his face to feel pain. An incomparable sense of fear and danger instantly filled his heart. At the crucial moment, the awareness that he had developed from many years of battle finally saved his life. He didn't even think about it. Almost at the first moment, he mobilized his defensive goo worms and barely put up 3 layers of defense. He was a defensive goo master, precisely because he specialized in defense. During the struggle for the throne, He Lulan had sent him to Feng Yuan's side to protect Feng Yuan. But in the great battle that followed, He Shui was concerned about his own safety and threw this mission to the back of his mind. Feng Yuan was left alone on the battlefield. The strange punches were as easy as breaking dry weeds. In a short period of time, his 3 defenses were shattered, and finally smashed into his chest. Crack! A crisp sound was heard. He Shui's sternum was completely shattered. A huge force surged forth, and his entire body was sent flying like a cannonball. He flew in the air, spitting out a trail of blood. Then, with a loud bang, it smashed into a small mound several hundred steps away. With a loud bang, the smoke and dust dispersed. Half of his body was embedded in the mound, unconscious. He instantly lost the ability to fight. Wolf Wang Da's people. What's going on? What's going on? Why did they attack all of a sudden? He Shui persuaded Wolf Wang Da's people to immediately join the battle, but in the end, both sides had a disagreement, and Wolf King suddenly attacked, sending He Shui flying. Everyone was in an uproar at this shocking change. The internal conflict came so suddenly, and was so serious. He Shui's identity was not simple. He was one of the 3 commanders of the Black Banner Army, and was also an important person in He tribe's higher-ups. Feng Yuan hit him with such a heavy blow. This was no different from openly provoking He Lulan. Once it caused a conflict between He Lulan and Chang Shanin, not only would this battle be ruined, it might even cause a political storm in the entire sacred palace. Wolf King, what is going on? I want to hear your explanation. He Lulan's expression was heavy as water as he walked over and questioned. He usually called Feng Yuan Brother Shanin to show his closeness. But now, he directly called him Wolf King, which meant he was very angry. But no matter how angry he was, why would Feng Yuan be afraid of him? Immediately, Feng Yuan looked at him without fear, his killing intent dissipating as he sneered, "Tribe leader He Lulan, you came at the right time. Your subordinate is so insensible, he actually dares to lecture me? So impudent and disrespectful, I taught him a lesson for you. Don't thank me, what kind of friendship do we have?" Putting the blame on him, impudent, disrespectful, these 2 labels were directly thrown over. The last sentence, "what kind of friendship do we have," was even more profound. It seemed like he was saying that they had a deep friendship, but at the same time, it seemed like he was saying that they did not have any bullshit friendship. He Lulan stared angrily at him. This Chang Shanin is really too arrogant. He actually dares to hit my people. Look at your lawless attitude, you really think I can't deal with you just because you have the highest battle strength? Black Tyrant roared in his heart. On the surface, he was a dark path cultivator, but because of the great strength true martial physique, he cultivated the strength path. His battle strength was strong, but he could not casually use strength path methods, because it would accelerate the calamity of the 10 extreme physiques. I'll endure it. Right now is the crucial moment of attacking the flying bear phantom. If I have an internal conflict now, all my previous efforts will be wasted. The most important thing for me now is to find a strength path immortal goo and advance to immortal. As long as they successfully killed the flying bear phantom, He Lulan would be able to pass through this floor, and the owner token in his hand would immediately become a one-edge owner token. With the one-edge owner token, he could check the rewards of any round in every floor. If he knew which floor rewarded a strength path immortal goo, he would have a target to attack in the future. Thus, killing the flying bear phantom was an extremely important matter. Even with He Lulan's violent temper, he had to endure it. Today, I will let you be arrogant for once. Sooner or later, I will make you kneel at my feet and lick my toes. When I tell you to shut up, you don't dare to make a sound. When I tell you to bark twice, you start barking like a dog. He Lulan was extremely furious, veins bulged on his forehead as he stared at Fang Yuan with a fierce gaze. Just as everyone was feeling stifled and uneasy because of this tense atmosphere, He Lulan suddenly raised his head and laughed loudly. Good. Brother Shanin, you did well. This disrespectful person needs to be taught a lesson. This was like He Lulan taking the initiative to admit defeat. Everyone who was familiar with his temper was shocked. His own people were beaten until they were half dead. He Lulan actually agreed. Wolf King is too domineering. He did not care about a super force like He tribe. Now even He Lulan has to admit defeat. Bullshit, this is He Lulan tribe leader looking at the big picture. He is not willing to lower himself to Chang Shanyan's level. Chang Shanyin beat our He tribe people, he will suffer sooner or later. Everyone criticized silently, while some secretly transmitted their voices. Roar! The roar of the flying bear attracted everyone's attention again. The flock of eagles and foxes were being routed. Sirs! This subordinate has failed you. He Qisheng's mouth and nose were bleeding, his face full of shame. Tang Miaoming's face was pale and her delicate body swayed. Protect the two lords. Tai Bai Yunsheng shouted. The two of you have worked hard and made great contributions. He had a sincere heart. After this battle, there will be a great reward for you. He Lulan took the initiative to console him. Without any obstruction, the flying bear charged towards them. Logically speaking, it should be a pack of wolves surrounding and attacking. The consumption continued. But when He Lulan glanced at Fang Yuan behind her, she saw Fang Yuan standing proudly with his arms crossed. He did not say a word, but the wolves on the battlefield retreated faster than anyone else. I'll endure it. One day, I will teach you a lesson. He Lulan gritted his teeth, knowing that he could not mobilize Fang Yuan. If he forcefully requested and Fang Yuan rejected him on the spot, he would be embarrassed instead. His reputation would be damaged. Thus, He Lulan shouted, "Move, execute the second step of the plan. Go!" Immediately, two figures shot out like lightning. The first figure had a graceful figure, wearing a fluttering blue dress. It was White Fairy Shishua. The second figure had a sturdy build, wearing a yellow robe. It was Gu tribe leader Gu Guolong. White Fairy Shishua flew in the air, her sleeves fluttered as she shouted, snow started to fall from the sky. It was her signature rank 5 Gu worm, Flying Snow Gu. Gu Guolong was running on the ground, his legs were moving like windmills, everywhere he went, dust and sand flew. It was also a rank 5 Gu, it was called Flying Sand and Moving Rocks. At once, the sky was filled with white snow, while the ground was filled with yellow dust and brown soil. The mountain-like flying bear phantom was in the middle of the snow and dust, its speed fell by several times, and its vision was greatly affected. It roared and waved its paws in the snow and dust, creating fierce air currents that caused the snow and dust to fly even more, blurring one's vision. Seeing this, He Lulan laughed sinisterly, ordering, "Third step." This time, close to 10 figures rushed out. Each of them was a famous expert. There was Bian Si Xian, Hao Ji Lu, Pei Yan Fei, Gao Yang, Zhu Zai, Dou Yi, Nye Qing, Tao Yu, Lu Shuang. These Gu masters were either rank 4 peak stage or rank 5 experts. Together with Gu Guolong and Shi Shua, the lineup was extremely powerful. They entered the snow and dust, attacking the flying bear phantom from all sides. The flying bear roared and showed its berserk nature, retaliating randomly, but the effect was not good. In contrast, the group of Gu masters used their prepared investigative Gu worms. Their vision was clear as they dodged and attacked the flying bear phantom indiscriminately. Pei Yan Fei had wings on his back, the swallow wings were like scissors, cutting through the air. Swallow Wings Gu. Golden Coat Gu. Rainbow Transformation Gu. Killer Move, Golden Rainbow Strike. He turned into a golden flash of lightning, and with a cracking sound, he slashed down rapidly. The flying bear roared in pain, blood splattered, and a huge wound appeared on its chest, from its left shoulder to the right waist. Nye Qing followed closely behind. He was a rank 5 Goo Master, activating Iron Hook Silver/Goo. His palm turned into an eagle's claw, aiming at the flying bear phantom and hissing fiercely. Immediately, several bright lights appeared in the air, some were black like iron, some were silver like dazzling. His claws continued to tear the air, countless bright lights landed on the flying bear's eyes, nose and mouth. Nyayaching attacked its weakness, beating the flying bear until it could not even raise its head. Overlapping shadow. Bian Si Xian shouted, lightly waving the shadow sword in her hand. A dark shadow sword light flew hundreds of steps and soundlessly hit the flying bear's right leg, leaving behind a 10-meter-long wound. Protect me. Yi Lui Sang gave a loud roar and raised both of his palms up high. A fireball appeared above his head and quickly expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. The fireball became bigger and bigger, turning the battlefield red. The blazing light could not be concealed by the snow and dust in the air. The flying bear also felt danger, struggling and charging towards Yi Lui Sang, who was in the air. But at the next moment, it was attacked by Do Yi, Gu Guolong, Tao Yu and the others. Do Yi was a transformation path Goo Master. He turned into a giant crocodile and stood up, fighting and retreating at the same time. He opened his huge mouth, shooting out his teeth one by one. These teeth landed on the flying bear's body, embedding deeply into it, and in 2 to 3 breaths of time, they exploded, turning the flying bear's body into a bloody mess. Gu Guolong waved his sleeves, dozens of goo worms flew out. These dozens of goo worms landed on the ground, causing the ground to bulge like a mound of earth. The mound of earth cracked, and huge stone statues resembling rock men stood up, attacking the flying bear phantom. Tao Yu was also an Earth Path Goo Master. But his method was different from Gu Guolong. He continuously extracted Earth Chi and gathered it around him. Next, he punched continuously, each punch sending out a lump of Earth Chi, flying in the air and turning into meteors, smashing on the flying bear. Bam bam bam, the intense meteors greatly slowed down the flying bear's attack on Yi Lui Sang. Finally, Yi Lui Sang finished gathering. He pressed his palms down. The huge fireball was like a mountain, hitting the flying bear phantom without any suspense. Boom! The intense explosion was deafening to the ears. Chapter 590. The sudden change caused everyone's expression to change. What's going on? Where did they go? They actually disappeared. Don't tell me this round has other mysteries. Everyone made guesses and discussed. He Lulan frowned, feeling puzzled. Sun Shirhan's expression was gloomy, as if he thought of something. He said hesitantly, "Is this Battle Space Goo?" Battle Space Goo? At once, everyone's gazes gathered on Sun Shirhan. He Lulan's eyes shined, saying, "This is indeed a Space Path Goo. But if it is Battle Space Goo, then Elder Hao Ji Lu is in danger. Battle Space Goo has disappeared for so many years, to think it would reappear here." Tai Bai Yunxing sighed, as if he had confirmed it. He had obtained an immortal inheritance from the old beggar. His knowledge was not ordinary. What is Battle Space Goo? Everyone asked. Yi Lui Sang's gaze was solemn. He was also the current tribe leader of a super force, Yi Lui tribe. But because he lost, he had no choice but to join He tribe. He had a mysterious fire path immortal Goo and was extremely knowledgeable. He explained, the so-called Battle Space Goo is a rank 5 space path Goo. Once it was activated, it could pull both the enemy and himself into another space. There, both sides will engage in a battle to the death. Only after the victor is decided, or when the time is up, can we leave the space. Sigh, to think that the flying bear had such a goo worm. He Lulan sighed at the sky, saying in a regretful tone. Everyone's expression turned grim, expressing their worry for Hao Ji Lu. The flying bear phantom was so strong. Even with everyone's strength, they could not kill it. Just Hao Ji Lu alone. How could he be its match? The result of this battle, anyone could easily guess. The flying bear would win and Hao Ji Lu would lose. Although Hao Ji Lu had water image goo and other escape methods, Yi Lui Sang had already said that the space created by the battle space goo would only close when the victor was decided between the enemy and himself. Hao Ji Lu had used all his escape methods, but he would be caught by the flying bear phantom sooner or later. Kill. Unless he had a space path goo worm to counter it. But Hao Ji Lu was a water path goo master, everyone knew this. Even the experts present did not have a space path, thus they were helpless against battle space goo. Perhaps there is still hope. Patriarch Yelu had just said, decide the winner, or wait for the time to run out. What does this end of time mean? Tang Miaoming asked. Yi Lui Sang let out a long sigh. AI, this time is over. It was directed at the goo master. To maintain the battle space goo, primeval essence needed to be consumed continuously. If a goo master keeps using it, when their primeval essence is exhausted, the battle space will naturally disappear. This time, everyone completely lost hope. The flying bear phantom's battle space goo was a wild goo. Wild goo absorbed the primeval chi in the air, but the primeval chi here was endless. It was impossible to count on the end of time. If we could completely absorb the vitality in the air, wouldn't that be possible? Bian Xian put forward a very good idea, which made everyone's eyes light up. But it was useless. Everyone discussed for a moment and found that they had to deal with the invisible and intangible primordial chi. He had to use chi path methods. However, chi path was an ancient path. It had once flourished for a time, but was later replaced by strength path. By now, strength path was already so weak, not to mention chi path. Chi path could be said to have gone extinct long ago. It was very rare to see a chi path goo master. Tai Bai Yunsheng had roamed northern plains for so many years, but he had only seen 3 chi path goo masters. Among them, the closest one was also the strongest. It was one of Lu Wenwu's sworn brothers, variant human Mo Shi Kuang. But this person had already followed Lu Wenwu and pledged allegiance to Lu tribe. How could he work under He Lulan? Even if he could help, he was a goo master who specialized in attacking. He might not have the ability to deal with primeval chi. Even if he had the ability, outsiders could not enter Imperial Court blessed land now. Even without chi path, it is important. The crucial thing is to cut off the connection between primeval chi and battle space goo. It is not necessary to empty the primeval chi here. Tai Bai Yunsheng stroked his beard and said. But no one could do anything about this. Cutting off the connection between primeval chi and wild goo was the specialty of restriction path. Restriction path was also an unorthodox path. There were very few restriction path goo masters. None of the people here were restriction path goo masters. Sigh, I passed the high-grade round earlier. In the treasure room of 88-point Jinyang Tower, I found the restriction path goo worm break element goo. It can be used here. Unfortunately, how could I have thought of this? I changed it for something else. Lu Shuang patted her thigh, feeling very regretful. Fong Yuan crossed his arms, standing at the side expressionlessly, not speaking. Think of a way, there must be a way. He Lulan had just said that when the air shook, the huge figure of the flying bear phantom appeared. It opened its mouth and roared, showing its arrogance. Everyone's heart sank, quickly looking for Hao Ji Lu's traces. They wanted to see him alive or dead, but there was no corpse of Hao Ji Lu. Quickly look at the corner of the flying bear's mouth. Sun Shirhan was an investigative goo master. He was the first to find some clues. Everyone followed the voice and saw there was blood on the corner of the flying bear's mouth. When it roared, there was a piece of cloth between its sharp teeth. This cloth looked familiar. Everyone quickly connected the dots. Wasn't this what Hao Ji Lu was wearing? They realized at once. Hao Ji Lu was chewed and eaten by the flying bear. The pitiful Hao Ji Lu, a famous demonic path expert, known as Water Demon, he had shown in the Imperial Court contest, but died here. Fate was unpredictable, reality was cruel, everyone could not help but feel a sense of sadness. Tai Bai Yunsheng was also helpless now. Although he had man as before goo, he needed a target to use it on. Right now, How Ji Lu's corpse was chewed into pieces by the flying bear and swallowed. How could he save him? The morale of the Goo Masters fell. The flying bear phantom is too fierce, how can we fight it? The battle space is small. The flying bear had 5 elements: bear skin goo, wind tiger cloud dragon goo, star river goo, grand chaotic dance goo, and 5 elements bear skin goo. If it was one-on-one, who could be its match? Who would have thought that the final hurdle would be so difficult? The rounds of 88-point Jinyang Tower got harder as they progressed. The final round, the 100th round, was the most difficult. He Lulan was naturally puzzled, but after thinking about it, he attributed Fang Yuan's refusal to retreat to his previous promise: once they pass, Wolf King would get 50% of the reward. But he did not know that Fang Yuan was truly concerned about the owner token in He Lulan's hands. He Lulan wanted to raise the owner token in his hands. This was exactly what Fang Yuan wanted. When his owner token reaches 4 edges, Fang Yuan would snatch it and form a 10 edges owner token, obtaining a giant Sun True inheritance. Because of Fang Yuan's actions, the scales of victory gradually tilted towards the Goo Master's side. The flying bear's injuries became more and more severe, blood flowed out like a waterfall. Howl! Suddenly, the flying bear roared again and spat out a transparent bubble. Rank 5 Battle Space Goo was activated again. The Goo Masters were already prepared and quickly retreated, but the transparent bubble was only aimed at one Blood Forest Wolf. Whoosh! With a soft sound, the flying bear and Blood Forest Wolf disappeared. What's the use of using the same trick again? Someone saw this and laughed loudly. As long as we don't get close to it, why would we be afraid of the Battle Space Goo? Ha ha ha! All of you shut up! He Lulan shouted angrily, but his expression was one of annoyance. Chapter 591. This time, the duration of the Battle Space Goo was much longer than before. After half a day, the Battle Space Goo disappeared, and the mountain-like flying bear phantom appeared in front of everyone again. Oh no, it was like we guessed. Sun Shirhan cried out. Humph! He Lulan's expression was extremely ugly. The flying bear phantom had no injuries on its body, its snow-white fur was flowing with a dazzling light. Its gaze was spirited, its battle intent high, but it seemed to have recovered completely. There was a rank 5 healing goo on the flying bear. This was already clear information. As for its opponent, the Blood Forest Wolf that was pulled into the battle space, only a pile of white bones remained. How can we fight this? Even the fierce General Pei Yanfei, whose battle intent was like a raging fire, was at a loss. At the side, Tai Bai Yunqing stroked his beard, muttering, no matter how serious the flying bear phantom's injuries are, as long as we activate the battle space goo and pull it into the battle space, it will recover to its original state after resting for half a day. During this period of time, we can only watch. That's right, although the battle space goo is a wild goo and is not controlled by the flying bear, it is very sensitive to danger. But wild goo is very sensitive to danger. When it senses danger, to protect its host, it will randomly choose a target and pull them into battle space. Doesn't this mean we can't use the wolf group? The wolf group is close combat. If they surround the flying bear, isn't this the best target to pull into the battle space? It seems we Goo Masters have to do it ourselves. Someone said this, and the entire place quieted down. Pulling back the wolf group and letting the Goo Masters attack. That might not work. The flying bear was extremely fast, pulling the Goo Master into the battle space. The Goo Master would struggle intensely. Struggling at death's door, trying to find a way to survive. To break the battle space goo and prevent the flying bear from having time to heal itself, there was a simple method, that was to make the Goo Master who was trapped in the battle space commit suicide. But nobody would want to commit suicide, it was human nature to survive. Even Tai Bai Yunqing could not save them. Water Demon Hao Ji Lu was a bloody example, it was right in front of them. This is the final hurdle. It is too difficult. Our batch is full of talents and heroes, yet we can't do anything to this flying bear virtual image even with our combined strength. The flying bear quietly lay on the ground, vigilantly watching everyone. For the time being, it didn't attack and only let out a low growl. You can't say that either. The crucial point was that the battle space goo could not be restrained. We don't have restriction path, chi path and other methods. Hey family patriarch, I suggest we change the strategy. Yi Lui Sang was also a patriarch of a super force. Others didn't dare to advise him, but he could. Hey Lulan snorted coldly and did not reply. His thoughts raced like lightning. The current situation. It was almost impossible to solve the problem of the battle space goo. It seemed like there was only one way, and that was for me to take the initiative and have the flying bear pull me into the battle void. In the air, I used strength path killer moves. Kill the flying bear. His strength path killer move was not to be underestimated. Its power was vast and mighty, it was He tribe's secret technique. He Lolan's dark Dao cultivation was not enough to deal with the flying bear. But if he used his strength path methods, along with the amplification of his great strength true martial physique, killing the flying bear would not be difficult. But this way, he would have to break the concealment effect of dark limit immortal goo and hasten the arrival of the 10 extreme calamities. I did not have enough time to begin with. If I use my strength path killer move now and kill the flying bear, the time will be even shorter. I still need to attack the next floor in such a short time and get through 100 rounds to obtain the strength path immortal goo. The difficulty of this is too high. But if I don't get through this round, without the one edge owner token, how can I know the location of the strength path immortal goo? Whether I change the strategy of the next floor or ask for reinforcements from the tribe, I need time. The worst situation is that even if I use my strength path killer move to kill this flying bear and obtain the one edge owner token, this 88-point Jinyang Tower might not have any strength path immortal goo. He Lulan was hesitant. This was a matter of life and death, and the path ahead was dark. He was at a loss. It is not difficult to break the battle space goo. His words were shocking. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice. It was none other than Wolf King. Brother Shan Yin, you have another brilliant plan? He Lulan quickly asked. Fong Yuan chuckled, for the matter of the 50% reward, I have to do my best, right? This plan has 3 steps. First, we will fight from afar and exhaust the flying bear. Second, we will send death warriors to engage in close combat. Once they are dragged into the battle space, they will immediately commit suicide. Third, the flying bear will not have any time to rest. We will continue to fight from afar and persevere. We will definitely be able to kill this beast. Brilliant plan. Why didn't I think of it? Immediately, someone shouted, some slapped their thighs in joy, while some sighed inwardly at the ruthlessness of this plan. But no matter what, everyone knew this was a way to solve the problem. In northern plains where wars were frequent, every tribe had death warriors. It was just that there were more or less of them, elites or not. He tribe was a super force. Not only did they nurture many death warriors, they were all elites. This way. Tai Bai Yunsheng frowned slightly. He could not bear to do this. Sun Shirhan's eyes flashed with sharp light. He only looked at He Lulan, not saying a word. Dying on the battlefield and sending oneself to die were 2 completely different concepts. The former was the glory of a warrior, the latter was a person in power harming the lives of others for their own benefit. If this was really done, He Lulan's reputation as the leader of He tribe would be ruined. This went against the values of the righteous path. The most important thing to do in the righteous path was to have a good reputation. If one's reputation was bad, their achievements in the righteous path would be limited. Demonic path was different. Regardless of reputation, the most important thing was strength. Thus, in the complex demonic path, there was Hao Ji Lu who brought disaster, and also Tai Bai Yunsheng who saved the dying and healed the injured. He Lulan heard this and had a strange expression. He pointed at the dying flying bear phantom. This is the reward for this round. What? It is this flying bear phantom. What's going on? Everyone was shocked, only Fang Yuan knew what was going on. He had the 6-edge owner token, he knew all the rewards of the rounds in 88-point Xinyang Tower like the back of his hand. Before challenging the round, he knew that the reward for this round was a rank 6 Phantom Path Immortal Goo. Its name was easy to understand, Flying Bear Phantom Goo. As expected, at the next moment, under everyone's shocked gazes, the dying flying bear gradually turned into a lump of white light the size of a mountain. The white light shrunk and turned into a dot, flying towards He Lulan. He Lulan quickly received it and observed it carefully. He was the owner of the owner token. After passing this round, the reward was his. He had just touched this flying bear phantom goo, but because of the power of 88-point Xinyang Tower, he easily refined it. Fang Yuan's 6-edge owner token was different. It was a product of cheating, only by controlling a certain floor could he take the floor's reward. Of course, it was not that he could not compete for He Lulan's owner token, but if he did, he would awaken Giant Sun's will, the losses would outweigh the gains and he would die a terrible death. This risk could not be taken, it was best not to. Flying Bear Phantom Goo was dispirited and on the verge of death, its aura was weak and its condition was not good. But He Lulan's gaze was fixed on it. What was this? This is an immortal goo. He had just sighed inwardly, when he heard someone speak, this immortal goo, give it to me. The tone was plain, but there was an unquestionable determination. He Lulan frowned, he did not need to turn around to know who this person was. Chapter 592. When Fang Yuan publicly asked for Flying Bear Phantom Goo, He Lulan's first reaction was to reject it. This was an immortal goo. Even ordinary goo immortals could not obtain one even if they begged for it. No matter how powerful the Wolf King was, he was only a mortal, he dared to make such an excessive request. Moreover, this Flying Bear Phantom Goo was very convenient to use. With just a thought and a casual toss, the goo worm could instantly turn into a Flying Bear Phantom and fight. The battle strength of the Flying Bear Phantom, although not as terrifying as the true Desolate Beast Flying Bear, was absolutely at half immortal battle strength. With one could look down on the mortal world. If He Lulan had such an immortal goo during the Imperial Court contest, how could it be Fang Yuan's turn to perform? Fang Yuan was openly asking for it, it was extremely rude. But He Lulan was furious, but also felt that it was reasonable. Perhaps only a person like Chang Shan-yin would have the guts to ask for it in public. Looking at the Flying Bear Phantom Goo in her hands, He Lulan gradually calmed down. Not good. The Flying Bear Phantom was almost killed by us, this immortal goo's condition is extremely bad, it cannot be used again, it needs to rest for a period of time. An immortal goo is injured, it needs to be healed. Other than that, I can only let it recover on its own. During this period, it needs to be fed, it cannot be interrupted. If I remember correctly, this Flying Bear Phantom Goo's food is the Desolate Beast Flying Bear's flesh and blood. This is difficult. How can I have such a thing? I can only ask for help from the tribe. The more He Lulan thought, the less anger he felt. He had one of the 10 extreme physiques, great strength true martial physique. He needed a strength path immortal goo to advance to goo immortal and escape from the threat of death. Flying Bear Phantom Goo was not what he needed, what he truly desired was a strength path immortal goo. My urgent matter now is to find a strength path immortal goo. Immortal goo are usually only at the final round of a certain layer, I need to rely on everyone's strength to pass the round. Even though He Lulan was not afraid of Chang Shan-yin. But if he forcefully held on to Flying Bear Phantom Goo, he would definitely fall out with the Wolf King and become estranged, making it even harder for him to mobilize the Wolf King's strength. Instead, she might as well give this immortal goo to him in exchange for his strength, to truly help He Lulan. In this way, he could also take care of He Lulan's reputation so that others wouldn't say that he didn't keep his word. He Lulan had only thought about it for a moment. Humph. Sun Shi-han sneered, Wolf Wang Da's man, this is an immortal goo, you want to take it away with just one sentence? Previously, my patriarch promised you 50% of the reward. But that does not mean we have to give you the immortal goo. Looks like the lesson I gave you last time wasn't enough. Hearing this, Fang Yuan's eyebrows twitched. His eyes were cold and his killing intent was not concealed at all as he rushed towards Sun Shihan. Sun Shihan's expression changed. He could not help but move a few steps closer to He Lulan. No one doubted him. Whether Fang Yuan had the guts to kill him. The Wolf King's ferocious might was deeply ingrained in everyone's hearts. Ha ha ha. He Lulan raised his head and laughed, taking a step towards Fang Yuan and patting his chest. A man's words carry enormous weight. Earlier, we promised Wolf King 50%, so it is 50%. Pass this round. We are also relying on Brother Shan Yin's brilliant plan. Thus, another 10% is not too much to ask. But immortal goo are unique, their value is immeasurable. Chapter 593. Time passed quickly, another month had passed in the blink of an eye. Northern Plains. Fierce winds howled and snow fluttered. The world was a vast expanse of whiteness, pure white snow covered 10,000 li of grassland, bone-chilling winds engulfed the world. Sometimes it formed tornadoes, sometimes it lifted the deep snow on the ground. The 10-year blizzard disaster wreaked havoc on the whole of Northern Plains. Living beings lamented, all living beings withered. In a limited area, the surviving humans and animals struggled at death's door. Not only did they have to overcome the cold, they also had to fight against snow monsters and others. Under such a harsh environment, the snowmen were like fish in water, moving about frequently and becoming very active. The icy blizzard was like a warm spring breeze to the snowmen. They hunted in the blizzard. Large numbers of wild snow path, ice path and water path goo worms were living on their bodies. During normal times, the snowman tribes that were hunted, suppressed and sold by goo masters had developed greatly, their forces expanding rapidly. Amidst the howling blizzard, two black shadows flashed. The shadows stood on the cliff, overflowing with immortal aura. They were He tribe's two goo immortals, He Bai and He Cheng. They looked down at the valley below them from high above. The blizzard was still violent, but it could not sway the two's clothes in the slightest. The falling snow could not obstruct the two's probing gazes. In the valley, ice houses had already been built, there were tens of thousands of them. A group of valiant snowman warriors had just returned from hunting. They had returned from a rewarding journey and were entering the valley. Rank 6 wood path goo immortal He Bai frowned. Humph. These snowmen are taking the chance to develop. In these 3 days, this is the 7th time we have seen a tribe of such scale. Those who are not of our race have different intentions. Although snowmen have the word human, they are variant humans. After the blizzard ends, Northern Plains humans will actively develop and will definitely have many battles with these snowmen. The more snowmen there are to humans, the more enemies they have, the stronger they are. He Cheng patted He Bai's shoulder, smiling. Brother should be happy. Looking at it from another angle, these snowmen are our wealth. If we capture these snowmen, we can not only exchange them for immortal yuan stones from other goo immortals. We can also teach Xue Song Zi a lesson. The corners of He Bai's mouth curled up into a smile. Elder brother is thoughtful. If not for Xue Song Zi, I would have gotten wooden chicken goo long ago. He had actually interfered in the battle for the imperial court. Over the past few days, we have been hunting snowmen and selling them to jewel yellow skies. He, I really want to see Xue Song Zi's expression right now. After saying this, the smile at the corner of He Bai's mouth immediately disappeared, his eyes revealing a hint of anxiety. Elder brother, He Lulan has already been in imperial court for so long. According to the calculation of the time, 88-point Jinyang Tower should have already formed more than 20 floors. Why haven't I seen the wooden chicken goo? He Cheng laughed. Calm down, calm down. The 88-point Jinyang Tower had a total of 88 floors. How many floors were there? He Lulan, that child. Although he was short-tempered, he was cautious when it came to important matters. Ever since he entered Imperial Court, he has never lost contact with us, right? Moreover, He Lulan already has a one-edge owner token. As long as the wooden chicken goo is taken, before it forms a floor, He Lulan will sense it. We will be able to receive the information. He tribe was a super force, although they did not have talent, they could match Fairy Imoyao's level. But using goo worms to send messages inside and outside, they still had their own ways. Hey, by side, Imperial Court blessed land and the outside world of Northern Plains have different time flow. One day in the outside world is more than 20 days in Imperial Court blessed land. I am slightly worried that He Lulan will not be able to notify us in time. If that happens, the help we can provide will be lesser. He Cheng consoled with a smile, brother, you are confused because of your concern. Don't worry, with He Lulan's current strength, getting through 3 to 4 floors is not a problem. Before that, let's take care of this Yeti tribe in front of us. Alright. The anxiety in He Bai's heart dissipated as he nodded. The two's figures shot down like lightning, directly charging towards the snowman tribe in the valley. He Cheng opened his mouth and laughed lightly. Immediately, his majestic laughter shook the heaven and earth, resounding through the clouds. The whole valley buzzed from the vibration, and the majestic snowfall also became sluggish. Bam 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 bam, the sound wave swept through, and countless icehouses were shattered into ice and snow. In an instant, the snowman tribe suffered disastrous losses. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! A strong enemy has appeared, brave warriors, it is time to defend our homeland. Defend our homeland, remember, we cannot fall, behind us are our wives, children, and parents. The snowmen shouted loudly. After a short period of panic, they prepared to resist. Humph, a mantis trying to stop a chariot, overestimating themselves. He Bai floated in the air, looking at the snowmen swarming over with a cold gaze, like he was looking at a group of ants. He lightly waved his sleeves. Buzz buzz buzz, a black mass of goo worms flew out. First hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. Eventually, hundreds of thousands of goo covered the sky above the valley, like a dark cloud pressing down on a city. The snowmen looked at the sky, their faces filled with shock and fear. Their fighting spirit that had just surged up was completely frozen by the might of the goo immortals. At this moment, they truly felt the bone-chilling coldness of the snowstorm. Goo immortals had immortal essence, and one bead of immortal essence could be seen as limitless primeval essence. This meant that any goo immortal could manipulate a vast number of mortal goo without having to worry about a lack of primeval essence. Although the snowman tribe was strong, facing the battle strength of a goo immortal, they were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, waiting to be slaughtered. At the next moment, He Bai lightly pointed, and the goo group pounced down. Mournful screams could be heard endlessly in the valley. Over 10 days later, Imperial Court blessed land. He Lulan slowly put down the letter goo in her hand, laughing coldly. The letter goo came from He tribe's goo immortal. The content was cliché, but it still urged He Lulan to speed up the search for wooden chicken goo. His gaze instantly sharpened, staring at Truyang building at the peak of the sacred palace. There, the 39th floor was slowly condensing. Although it had yet to take form, through the one-edge owner token, He Lulan could know the goo worms in this floor. Wooden chicken goo. Wooden chicken goo has finally appeared. He Lulan's heart shook, but soon, he calmed down. His gaze was like cold lightning as he turned to look at He Shu. Chapter 594. Not long after, Ma Yingjie heard the summons and hurried over to pay his respects. As He tribe's greatest opponent, Ma tribe had suffered a crushing defeat in the decisive battle. Ma tribe's experts were almost all slaughtered, young tribe leader Maing Jie was luckily saved and bravely took on the heavy responsibility of tribe leader. His original plan was to hole up in Warm Pond Valley and recuperate as much as possible. But He Lulan forced him to come and forcefully annexed Ma tribe. Next, Ma tribe could only follow He tribe to Imperial Court Blessed Land. Maing Jie had thought that He Lulan wanted to strip Ma tribe of its name and swallow the whole tribe. For this, he had put in many efforts and even accepted outsiders and gave them the surname Ma. But in the end, none of the things he had predicted happened. Not only that, after Ma tribe came to Imperial Court Blessed Land, they did not receive any harsh criticism from He Lulan. Instead, they were treated equally. He Lulan selflessly opened up 88-point Jinyang Tower. Ma tribe had gained a lot of benefits. Right now, Ma tribe was recovering well and the tribe's forces were growing stronger day by day. However, there was no free lunch in this world. Maing Jie had been feeling uneasy because of this. Receiving He Lulan's sudden summons, the uneasiness in his heart increased by several times and reached its peak. Looking at Maing Jie, He Lulan smiled. Ma tribe leader, how has Ma tribe been these days? Maing Jie was extremely vigilant and immediately replied, we are fine. This is all thanks to tribe leader's magnanimity and disregard of past enmity. Ma tribe has been struggling at death's door and has now recovered some vitality. If I remember correctly, this time, Ma tribe was sponsored by Snowy Mountain Blessed Land's demonic path Gu Immortal Shui Song Zi, right? He Lulan said amiably. Maing Jie was tongue-tied and broke out in cold sweat, unable to speak. Ma tribe, as a Huang Jin bloodline, privately communicated with a demonic path Gu Immortal. This was no doubt breaking the rules set by ancestor Giant Sunday. Could it be that He Lulan is here to settle the score? Damn it, now he is the meat on the chopping block, and I want to destroy the Ma family. All I need is one word from He Lulan. Maing Jie was very nervous. Revitalizing the Ma family was his lifelong wish. The Ma family was his lifeline. Ha ha ha. He Lulan laughed, her laughter echoing throughout the study. Don't be nervous, Ma family head. As long as you cooperate obediently, glory, splendor, and wealth will come rolling in. Please speak, patriarch. Maing Jie gritted his teeth. A wise man submits to circumstances. Under such circumstances, he had no choice but to bow down. What? However, what He Lulan said next shocked Maing Jie. He was as stunned as a statue. Great Snow Mountain Blessed Land. The towering snow-capped peak stood tall among them. The sky was blue. Radiance flowed around. The fifth branch peak. Within Ice Lake Palace, a negotiation was nearing its end. Shui Songzi had an anxious expression as he looked at Demon Lord Long Dan in front of him, saying impatiently, Demon Lord, don't forget who lent you the immortal Yuan stone in an emergency. To repay your debt. It was me. Now that I encountered some trouble, I asked you for help, but you are making all sorts of excuses. Isn't this too disappointing? Is the great Demon Lord Long Dan such a petty person? Demon Lord Long Dan smiled as he sipped his tea, saying in a gentle tone, Lord Song Zi, please be careful with your words. Benjun will always remember our previous friendship in my heart. I have not forgotten it at all. But this time, Lord Song Zi, your trouble is not small. If I help you, I will offend He tribe's Gu immortals. My business in Jewel Yellow Skies has just started to improve, it cannot withstand such a blow. Shui Song Zi sold snowmen for a living, he was quite wealthy. The waters of the Imperial Court contest are too deep, it is not something I can step into. Previously, many demonic path Gu immortals had interfered in the Imperial Court contest, but how many of them had a good ending? Sigh, my greed was aroused by wooden chicken Gu. I thought that since I had already offended He tribe's Gu immortals, I might as well interfere. But I did not know how many demonic path Gu immortals were watching me make a fool of myself. Sigh, it is time to reflect. Shui Song Zi sighed repeatedly. Just as he was about to reflect on this painful experience and learn from it, a letter Gu pierced through the air and appeared in front of him. Ah, Isn't this the letter Gu I gave to my tribe for communication? Shui Songzi felt it was strange, and held it in his hand. His mind inspected it, and he immediately showed an astonished expression. What does this mean? Hey, Lulan actually wants to cooperate with me. Shui Songzi sneered in disdain, using wooden chicken goo as bait to deceive me. This might be another scheme of Hey tribe. Wait a moment. This is actually, does Hey Lulan really want to cooperate with me? Interesting, ha 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 ha, interesting. Half a month later, Mother. Hey Lulan suddenly sat up on the bed. He breathed heavily, his whole body drenched in cold sweat. A long while later, his pupils gradually regained their focus. It was another nightmare. This nightmare had been tormenting him since a long time ago. Each nightmare was like a pile of firewood. It made the fire of hatred in his heart burn even more fiercely. After calming his breathing, Hey Lulan got up from the bed. His body was swollen like a bear, and his triangular eyes started to shine with an intimidating light. But on his face, there was a deep sense of exhaustion. But when he opened the window, this exhaustion was completely concealed, and people could feel it. Only the aura of a ruthless overlord lingering around his body. He looked up at 88-point Xinyang Tower, and pondered about the matter of cooperating with Shui Songzi. In the letter, he did not hesitate to take a risk, telling Shui Songzi the biggest secret in his heart, and even gave out the crucial goo worms, using his body as a hostage to exchange for Shui Songzi's trust. Right now, the 39th floor had been condensed for a long time, and his cooperation with Shui Songzi was progressing well. Thanks to this demonic path Gu Immortal's help, Hey Lulan had a smooth journey in the 39th floor. It could be said that he was advancing triumphantly. His actions were equivalent to betraying Hey tribe. Hey tribe's Gu Immortals would definitely not let him off. In fact, Hey Lulan did not even know how long he could hide this matter. But he was clear that as long as he was in Imperial Court blessed land, he was safe. Imperial Court blessed land forbade Gu Immortals from entering or leaving. At this point, he could no longer turn back, he could only move forward until his death. But the most crucial thing in Hey Lulan's plan, the strength path immortal Gu that could change the entire situation, had yet to appear. He could only continue to wait. 88-point Xinyang Tower, 7th floor. 90th round. Chong Ji-yu pays respects to Lord Supreme Elder. Chong tribe leader knelt on the ground with an ashamed expression. Do you know why I summoned you? Fong Yuan stood in front of him, speaking plainly. This subordinate is ashamed. I have failed to live up to Lord Supreme Elder's trust. This subordinate is extremely useless, allowing the murderer to roam freely. Lord Supreme Elder, please punish me. Chong Ji-yu continued to kowtow, his forehead knocking against the ground, producing muffled sounds. Not long after, blood could be seen on his forehead. Fong Yuan snorted coldly, you have some self-awareness, you know your own incompetence. Stop kowtowing, get up and answer me. This subordinate doesn't dare. Get up. Chapter 595. Fong Yuan wiped Chong Ji-yu's tears, his tone gentle like the spring breeze. What are you crying for? You are my Wolf King's son, you can only bleed and not shed tears. The word son made Chong Ji-yu's heart shudder, as if he had received an electric shock. Great joy engulfed Chong Ji-yu's heart like a tsunami. Father finally admitted that I am his son. He called me personally. The grievances he had accumulated in his heart, the pressure he had to bear, the accumulated anger, shame, and grief towards his foster father's death, at this moment, he was greatly relieved. He could not help but shed tears of joy, but Fong Yuan's words were still ringing in his ears. He endured bitterly, his face was distorted and his lips were bleeding from biting, but his tears still flowed out unceasingly. He opened his mouth, wanting to call out "Father," but he did not dare. He could only repeatedly apologize while sobbing, I'm sorry. Fong Yuan lightly patted his shoulder, saying warmly, do you know what your greatest shortcoming is? Chong Ji-yu was slightly dazed. Fang Yuan continued with an affirmative tone, your greatest shortcoming is that you are not strong enough. Not strong enough? Chang Jiyu stopped sobbing, his teary eyes staring at the imposing figure in front of him. This is yellow gold relic goo, it is enough for you to climb to rank 4 peak stage. There is also purple crystal relic goo, it can let you advance by leaps and bounds in rank 5. Fang Yuan took out 2 relic goo and stuffed them into Chang Jiyu's hands. Chang Jiyu received it in a daze, then a surge of gratitude filled his heart. This is a father's love. How many poets have praised a father's love as heavy as a mountain, as deep as the sea? Today, I finally feel it. Father. Chang Jiyu sobbed emotionally, looking at Fang Yuan, he kneeled down. A young eagle's wings will not become as hard as steel without going through the tempering of wind and frost. A young horse will not be able to gallop like the wind without experiencing a fall. I have already heard the report on Chang tribe's matters, but I will not care. Become strong. Accept this tempering, take over the tribe, and use this to establish your prestige, this is what you need to do. I'll be watching you from behind the scenes, Fang Yuan said. Lord Father, this child is ashamed. Being so attentive to by his biological father made Chang Jiyu excited. This made him feel a sense of fear. Fang Yuan waved his hand. I know your concerns. Was he worried that his aptitude was insufficient and it would be difficult for him to break through to rank 5? Don't worry, not only will I raise your aptitude, I will also teach you a set of strength path killer move, it will be extremely powerful. This is my special skill, even during the final battle of the royal court. I only used 30% of my power. Ah! Chang Jiyu couldn't help gaping, pleasantly surprised. His father actually had a method to raise his aptitude, and was even going to teach him a strength path killer move. This set of strength path killer moves was what father had used in the decisive battle against Ma tribe. And that was only 30% of its power. Father, you are my biological father after all. Although adoptive father Chang Biao treated me very well, compared to my biological father, it was nothing. This was the deepest bond in the bloodline. Lord Father, he is going to nurture me. He is going to vigorously groom me. After the shock, Chang Jiyu's heart surged with even greater joy. Next, I will raise your aptitude. Relax your mind and calm your mind. Sleep, have a good sleep first. Fang Yuan's voice was warm and gentle, while secretly activating a hypnosis goo. Chang Jiyu's mood had fluctuated greatly, he was already exhausted. Under the effect of the goo worm, Fang Yuan's heart was filled with confidence. Under the effect of the goo, he soon fell asleep. Fang Yuan smiled lightly, taking out blood skull goo. This goo had a crystal-like texture, it was the size of a baby's skull and could be held in one palm. Right now, it was full of fresh blood, it was scarlet, flickering with demonic blood light. This blood. It was obtained by Fang Yuan secretly killing Chang tribesmen these days. The sleeping Chang Jiyu's lips curled up. A smile of happiness appeared on his face. He would never have thought that the main culprit who had been assassinating Chang tribesmen these days was the biological father he adored and worshipped the most. Even outsiders like He Lulan were kept in the dark, not suspecting Fang Yuan. Go! Fang Yuan willed, blood skull goo slowly flew out of his palm, circling around Chang Jiyu. Next, blood skull goo stopped above Chang Jiyu's head, opening its mouth and spitting out a thick stench of blood. The blood directly entered Chang Jiyu's head, skin, hair, following his meridians, finally gathering in his aperture. Chang Jiyu's aptitude started to rise slowly but steadily. By the time Chang Jiyu woke up, Fang Yuan had already disappeared. The previous encounter was like a dream, causing Chang Jiyu to be suspicious. But the pile of goo worms and sufficient food on the ground was the best proof, proving that everything had really happened. Heavens, my aptitude really rose, it is now 96%. After inspecting his aperture, Chang Jiyu shouted in joy. Stay here and cultivate properly these few days. Use all the relic goo that father left behind, this way, your cultivation will reach rank 5 upper stage. The other goo worms on the ground were temporarily lent to you by me. There is an east window goo inside that records the details of the killer move, just practice according to it. An echo entered Chang Ji-yu's ears. Chang Ji-yu was extremely excited. Ah, this is father's voice. Lord Father, your son will definitely not disappoint you. Your son will definitely become a rank 5 goo master and master the killer move. Chang Ji-yu's heart surged with unbounded heroism and fighting spirit. He sat cross-legged on the spot, taking out a yellow gold relic goo and placing it in his aperture. Fong Yuan had been observing in secret. This is the person you chose to test the goo on. He is really not bad. In his mind, Mo Yao's will sneered, but in the east window goo, you specially pointed out the flaws of 6-arm heavenly zombie king. The goo worms you lent him were also not tampered with. Aren't you afraid he will remember the flaws and use them carefully, not turning into a heavenly zombie? Hee, Mo Yao, you don't need to worry. I still have this bit of ability to grasp people's hearts. You haven't used the killer move 6-arm heavenly zombie king, but when you turn into a heavenly zombie, that feeling of endless power is so intoxicating. Even I am mesmerized by it. Chang Ji-yu is a young man, his temperament is lacking in self-control. Your son was wrong, your son has let you down. No, it is precisely like this, I needed you to become like this. Fong Yuan laughed inwardly, but on the surface, he helped Chang Ji-yu up. My son, how many times have I told you, don't cry. You can't cry. Although you were wrong, I, your father, am also at fault. These days, I have only been exploring this labyrinth round and did not take care of you at all times. Your father believes that there is always a way out. We will research together and find a way to turn you back into a human. There will definitely be a way. Believe in your father, believe in yourself. Fong Yuan's words were sincere, his eyes slightly teary. Father. Chang Ji-yu cried continuously. He was thoroughly moved. He had turned into a monster, he did not even dare to look at his own face. But his father Chang Shan-yin did not feel disgusted, it was clearly his son's fault, but he still took the blame. Now that his son had become like this, he still did not give up. This is the deepest bond between father and son. This is my father, my biological father. Chang Ji-yu was extremely moved, a flame of hope was ignited in his heart of despair, he had the confidence to continue living. Child, you should stay here for now. Let me think about how I can change you back to your original state. As for Chang tribe, father will take care of it. Don't worry, rest well here, with us father and son working together, why would we be afraid of a mere killer move dead object? Fong Yuan's words made Chang Ji-yu feel like he had found his backbone. What goo did Mo Yao's will use? These days, I have been collecting wisdom path information from all over, and also purchased many wisdom path goo worms that can condense wills. But I've never found any worm that can produce such a mysterious, unfathomable will like hers. Sigh, I don't have much time left. Right now, 88-point Xinyang Tower has almost 60 floors. Hei Lulan is attacking the 39th floor with all her strength. It seems that her target is most likely wooden chicken goo. If we bring it out, what will it turn into? Northern Dark Ice Soul thought for a moment and answered, like that deer, it will turn into a real living being. Saying this, he suddenly froze. Desolate Gue Desolate Im smiled at him, it seems you understand. We are such living beings. We are formed from life goo. We are human-shaped sapphires. Northern Dark Ice Soul completely understood. Where did humans come from? Wisdom Goo had already said it clearly, this blue sea is the source of all living beings, all life in the world originates from here. Humans, naturally originated from here. Their father, Ren Zhu, was once a sapphire at the bottom of the sea. By chance, he came out of the sea, and became a living being. He roamed the world, and struggled to survive until he reached this step. But humans are the spirit of all living beings. How many human-shaped sapphires were there in this huge blue sea? There were definitely very few of them, and it was very likely that there was only Ren Zhu. Wanting to find a small sapphire in this huge sea, how big of a project was this? This was even more difficult than Desolate Gue Desolate Een at Chengbai Mountain. Finding the only success Gu was 1,000,000 times more difficult. I know a way to get human-shaped life Gu as soon as possible. Desolate Gue Desolate Een suddenly said. What way? Northern Dark Ice Soul suddenly had a bad premonition. Desolate Gue Desolate Een smiled, that is to let me sink to the bottom of the sea and assimilate with this blue sea, becoming a life Gu again. Although Desolate Gue Desolate Een had become a monster, he was still a human in essence. The essence of life had not changed. Since he was a human, once he assimilated, he would become a human-shaped sapphire life Gu. This deduction was not wrong. No wonder Wisdom Gu said, pay attention to time, he could not exceed 15 minutes, otherwise he would be assimilated by the blue sea. Wisdom Gu's words were not nonsense. Wisdom Gu also said, if you cannot do it, don't blame my method for not being effective. From this sentence, it was very likely that there were no more human-shaped sapphire in the blue sea. If the siblings were not willing to sacrifice themselves, they would not be able to find human-shaped life Gu. In that case, don't blame Wisdom Gu, it is you who cannot do it. No, sister, you cannot sacrifice yourself like this. Northern Dark Ice Soul quickly stopped her. Although he wanted to save his father, but he was not willing to sacrifice his own sister. I can do it, the meaning of my life is to save my father. Desolate Gue Desolate Een replied calmly. Northern Dark Ice Soul was suddenly speechless. He was the one who gave Desolate Gue Desolate Een this meaning of life, and Desolate Gue Desolate Een lived for this. In other words, if she saved her father, then her life would have no meaning. What was the point of continuing to live? Tai Baiyinsheng's injuries were incomparably heavy, they were secretly shocked. He is still breathing. Someone stretched out his finger and checked Tai Baiyinsheng's breathing, shouting, quick, who is a healing Gu master? Who is the healing Gu master? Quickly stabilize old lord's injuries. Let me. I am also a healing Gu master. Many healing Gu masters took the initiative to help. Tai Baiyinsheng's reputation and benevolence had already been deeply engraved in everyone's hearts. Undoubtedly, he was more popular than He Lulan and Chang Shanin. Even Lord Tai Baiyinsheng suffered such heavy injuries. Sigh. I am afraid our large-scale attempt this time has failed. Someone sighed. The time limit is over, most of the Gu masters have not returned, the casualties this time are too severe. Did anyone see Lord Gao Yang and Lord Zhu Zai come out? Someone suddenly realized and asked. Everyone looked around, looking at each other. No one saw Gao Yang and Zhu Zai's figures. And in 88-point Jinyang Tower, that round still existed. Only that Gu masters were not allowed to enter for a short period of time. Everyone was very clear on what this meant. Since 88-point Jinyang Tower was formed, 5 rank 5 experts had already been sacrificed. Such heavy casualties caused the square to fall into silence. When Tai Baiyinsheng opened his eyes, he found himself lying on the bed, his body extremely weak. He could not even get up. Seeing him open his eyes, the servant girl beside him immediately shouted in joy, "Old sir, you are awake, you are finally awake. Someone come quickly, old sir is awake." Soon, Tai Bai Yuncheng heard a series of hurried footsteps. A group of healing Gu masters. They came to his side and checked his body together. "Lord Elder, don't worry, your injuries are no longer a problem. But you are old, the injuries this time are quite severe and have damaged your foundation. You need to take care of yourself in the future, especially in the next few months. Your body is weak and cannot take nourishment, you need to recuperate quietly." The leader of the healing Gu masters consoled him. Tai Bai Yuncheng did not hesitate to agree to He Lolan's request in order to lead the group to charge through the round. He had already become an external elder of He tribe. Tai Bai Yuncheng's gaze was unfocused, he had been in a daze since he woke up, but after hearing this, he recovered a trace of spirit and asked, "Where is this?" Returning to Lord Elder, "This is Lady He Lolan's residence. Ever since Lord Elder failed in the round and narrowly escaped death, our clan leader has been very concerned and personally brought you here to recuperate. The servants have already reported it, I believe Lord Clan Leader will come to see you soon." It was still that leader who answered. Failed in the round and narrowly escaped death. Tai Bai Yuncheng frowned slightly, the memories in his mind started to recover. He recalled the final scene. He used his last trace of primeval essence to activate the defensive Gu and successfully squeezed into the main hull from the encirclement of the blood beasts. But not long after, he fainted and lost consciousness. When he woke up, he found himself lying in this place. "That means, I really failed in the round?" Tai Bai Yuncheng's tone suddenly rose, his gaze becoming extremely sharp. "Lord Elder." The group of healing Gu masters around the bed looked at each other, wanting to console him but unable to say anything. Thus, they could only lower their heads. In the room, there was silence. Tai Bai Yuncheng's gaze stared blankly, he was silent for a while before suddenly raising his head and laughing, "Ah, so I failed. I failed at the last step, I failed at the last step." He could not get up, he could only use his palm to slap the side of the bed and laugh crazily. But such an ironic outcome was not the source of Tai Bai Yuncheng's pain. His pain was because he had betrayed his comrades for his own selfish desires. Was this still Tai Bai Yuncheng? Memories flashed in his mind. Again and again. Since young, he had always believed in the power of love. Ever since he was a child, he had a good reputation. When Tai Bai tribe annexed other tribes, he saw his childhood playmate facing the tragic fate of becoming a female slave. He was the one who spoke, wanting to marry her. Thus, he forgave a group of captives. But on their wedding night, his wife betrayed him. The captives contacted enemies and attacked his tribe, causing his parents to die. His subsequent life as a slave was filled with hardships, he had always been suffering from intense inner torment. Finally, one day, he kindly scooped a bowl of water for an old beggar he did not know. The old beggar gave him 3 immortal inheritances to choose from. The first inheritance allowed one to bathe in fire and tread on fire, looking down on the mortal world. The second inheritance allowed one to control wind and float in the sky, roaming freely in the world. The third inheritance allowed one to transcend life and death, helping the common people. Tai Bai Yuncheng chose the third inheritance. At that moment, he seemed to have found light in the darkness, his heart was no longer tormented. He had no regrets, he was reborn from the ashes. After so many years, the old beggar's laughter still lingered in his ears. Transcending life and death, helping the common people became his creed in life. For the rest of his life, he really did so. He received the gratitude of countless people, his benevolence spread far and wide, his radiance illuminated the whole of northern plains. He was a living legend. But now, he failed. His failure was not because he did not obtain lifespan Gu. It was because he betrayed his comrades, he betrayed his own creed in life. But all of this was done by himself without any hesitation. He used almost his entire life to establish and practice his own creed in life. But at that moment, he destroyed this creed himself. He saw another side of himself, his selfishness. He had once thought that he was that person in everyone's eyes, walking in the grassland under the setting sun, helping the common people, practicing medicine to save the world. But now, in his heart, this image was getting further and further away. He staggered along. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, his shadow became longer and longer. Chapter 599. He Lulan frowned as he walked out of Tai Bai Yunsheng's room. Experts do not get arrogant in victory and do not give up in defeat. To think that the famous Tai Bai Yunsheng is only so-so. He was very dissatisfied with Tai Bai Yunsheng's mental state. Tai Bai Yunsheng is the #1 healer. If he is not in good condition, the difficulty of passing the rounds will increase by a lot. Thinking of this, He Lulan raised his head and looked up. At the top of the sacred palace, there were thousands of rays of light shooting out majestically. 67 floors had already condensed in 88-point Jinyang Tower. It was currently condensing the 68th floor. He Lulan looked at it with infatuation. A cold light of determination flashed in his eyes. In this 68th floor, there was a strength path immortal goo. He Lulan had a one-edge owner token. He knew about this strength path immortal goo the moment it was absorbed by 88-point Jinyang Tower. This was a rank 6 strength path immortal goo. It was called Flying Bear Strength Goo. Flying Bear was a desolate beast. It had battle strength on par with Goo Immortals. Flying Bear Strength Goo could allow Goo Immortals to have a certain chance of summoning a Flying Bear Phantom when they attack, and unleash Flying Bear Divine Strength. This was the immortal Goo that He Lulan needed. With it, he could advance to a Strength Path Goo Immortal. I have to get this immortal Goo. With it, there will be hope for my revenge and my great plan. He Lulan clenched his fists, but he soon relaxed. His trusted aide, He Shu, ran over and knelt down at his feet. He Lulan's expression quickly returned to normal. Even in front of his trusted aide, he did not reveal a trace of his true emotions. Every day at this time, He Shu would come and report the situation of the experts in the sacred palace. Lord Chang Shanin. He is still at the 90th round of the 7th floor. There is still no progress. Lord Yi Lui Sang is at the 49th floor. I broke through the 81st round and lost 30% of my Goo Masters. He Lulan completely opened the 88-point Jinyang Tower to the public. This was a rare act of generosity, and it caused everyone to crazily explore the true Yang Tower. Even if every guest token was sold at a sky-high price, there would still be countless people scrambling for it. Humans die for wealth, and birds die for food. Blinded by greed, many people died in battle. Including Tai Bai Yunsheng this time. Chang Biao, Pan Ping, Hao Ji Lu, Gao Yang and Zhu Zai, 5 rank 5 experts had already fallen. This was a huge loss for He Lulan. The smaller the strength he could use, the harder it would be for him to obtain Flying Bear Strength Goo. Of course, he completely opened up the 88-point Jinyang Tower. There were also certain benefits. The Goo Masters who participated, as long as they survived, most of them would experience rapid growth. There were also many Goo Masters who succeeded. There were many new rank 4 and 5 faces. 88-point Jinyang Tower. This was originally arranged by Giant Sun Immortal for the benefit of his descendants. This 68th floor is the focus of our tribe. It is even more important than the 39th floor. This is a mission specially given by a certain supreme elder of our tribe. Thus, every bit of strength in the sacred palace needs to be cherished. He Shu, from today onwards, announced this news to the public. From today onwards, 88-point Jinyang Tower is closed. Everyone has to listen to my orders. Break through the 68th floor. True Yang Tower will be reopened. He Lulan instructed, his tone filled with unquestionable determination. Hearing this was a mission from a certain supreme elder, He Shu's body shook, his expression turning extremely solemn. Go and do it. He Lulan waved his hand. He Shu quickly accepted the order and left. Every Imperial Court contest was a game of chess played by Gu immortals. Even the strongest Gu master was just a chess piece on the chessboard. Gu immortals would help a tribe participate in the Imperial Court contest in order to obtain certain immortal Gu. This was the most common situation. He Lulan was certain that closing 88-point Xinyang Tower might cause dissatisfaction, but with the reputation of He tribe's Gu immortals, no one would dare to raise any objections. Tai Bai Yinsheng's injuries are severe, but he only needs to rest for half a month before he can join the battle. After all, he is a healing Gu master and is at the back of the battlefield. He needs lifespan Gu. To mobilize him, we can start from this aspect. Chang Shan-in is competing with the 7th floor. His days are not going well. Because of his carelessness, his own son Chang Jiyu died in this round. To regain his reputation, he has to get through this round. But he asked for Flying Bear Phantom Immortal Gu from me earlier, and also owed me a huge amount of resources. I can still mobilize him. There is also Yi Lui Sang, he has a Fire Path Supplementary Immortal Gu, it can be of great help. I will use heavy enticement, of course. The most important thing is to mobilize the strength of Xue Song Zi, He Cheng and He Bai. It is time to send a letter to them. He Bai looked at He Lulan's letter and was extremely excited. After waiting for so long, Wooden Chicken Gu has finally appeared. To think it was in the 68th floor. He did not have the slightest doubt of the contents of this letter. After all, He Lulan was He Cheng's son, the current generation leader of He tribe. If his loyalty was to be doubted, then who else in this world could be trusted? At the side, He Cheng laughed heartily. Brother, you have waited until the moon is bright and the flowers bloom, your hard work pays off. Did the letter mention the matter of Strength Path Immortal Gu? He Bai's face turned red. I am ashamed, I only cared about Wooden Chicken Gu and forgot about Nephew's situation. Nephew has the great strength true martial physique. He needs a Strength Path Immortal Gu to advance to Gu Immortal. Nephew also mentioned this matter in the letter, but unfortunately, the Strength Path Immortal Gu has not appeared yet. There is still no Strength Path Immortal Gu. He Cheng frowned. Previously, He Bai was worried about Wooden Chicken Gu and was comforted by He Cheng. This time, it was He Bai's turn to comfort He Cheng. Brother, don't worry, 88-point Xinyang Tower needs to condense a total of 88 floors, there are still 20 floors that have not condensed yet. He Cheng nodded and sighed. Dark Limit Immortal Gu can't be concealed any longer, this can be considered my son's last chance. Sigh, man proposes, God disposes, let's leave it to fate. He Bai's heart was fervent as he changed the topic to Wooden Chicken Gu. Chapter 600. Fierce winds howled and the blizzard wreaked havoc. Demon Blood Hill, which was covered in dark red grass, was now a vast expanse of white. The towering hill had also succumbed to the might of the 10-year blizzard, becoming as weak as a baby. Howl howl howl, huge figures, at least 10 meters tall, were faintly discernible in the blizzard. These were weather monsters that would only appear in the blizzard, snow monsters. The bigger these snow monsters were, the stronger their battle strength. 10 meters tall snow monsters could battle rank 3 Gu masters. 40 meters tall had the strength of a rank 4 Gu master. 50 meters tall had the terrifying battle strength of a rank 5 Gu master. Along with the blizzard, the snow monsters wreaked havoc in northern plains. They slowly gathered and concentrated their attacks on the few lucky survivors in northern plains. It brought a death blow to humans and all living things that were struggling at death's door. But everything had its vanquisher. Snow monsters were snowmen's prey. By devouring the flesh and blood of snow monsters, snowmen could increase their reproduction speed and even prolong their lifespan. He Bai and He Cheng stood at the peak of the towering Demon Blood Hill. They were wearing black robes and were especially conspicuous in the vast expanse of white snow. Beside them were the corpses of hundreds of snow monsters. Unless the snow monsters reached 60 meters in size, no matter how many snow monsters there were, they would only be sending themselves to death when facing Gu immortals. He Bai and He Qing had been waiting for a long time. Suddenly, He Bai's expression shook as he sensed something and his sharp gaze looked towards the left. There, a whirlpool of blizzard formed in the air. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a giant hand completely made of blizzard, flying snow hand. The flying snow hand finished forming and grabbed towards He Bai and He Qing. "Ah, I was waiting for you." He Bai laughed heartily and flicked his finger. Large numbers of rank 5 goo worms flew out. He Qing also did the same. The flying snow hand grabbed these goo worms one by one and gripped them tightly. The snow hand collapsed and the goo worms inside disappeared, tightly gripped by a mighty force. They were sucked into Imperial Court blessed land. He tribe's 2 goo immortals did not resist and let the flying snow hand grab their goo worms. This situation lasted for an hour as large numbers of rank 5 goo worms were taken away. He Bai and He Qing stopped and looked at each other with a smile before their figures flew away. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. After a while, He Lulan suddenly sensed something. Her eyes lit up as she raised her head and stared at the 88-point Jinyang Tower. Backup is here. At the peak of the sacred palace, mist and multicolored light swayed. The 68th level was still forming. The 100th stage had already been completed. The 68th layer that had yet to form was still in its embryonic form. It shone like liquid as it swayed, containing the large number of goo worms that were brought in from the outside world of northern plains. Some of these goo worms were wild goo, while others came from He Qing and He Bai. The 88-point Jinyang Tower would choose the strongest among them. It formed the 99th checkpoint, the 98th checkpoint. He Lulan sensed carefully and frowned. Those 2 from He tribe have already made their move. But Xue Song Zi is still watching with folded arms. Humph. He and Xue Song Zi communicated secretly and reached an agreement. One of the terms of the deal was for Xue Song Zi to assist him at a specific time. But now, Xue Song Zi was not moving at all. He Lulan was displeased. He immediately wrote a letter and sent it through a goo worm. Soon, he received a reply.